2022 at 5:18 p.m. This is a public hearing on withdrawing funds from the school district building repair and maintenance fund for the septic system repair project at Harold Martin School for up to $15,000. We have a quorum of school board members with us, including Dulce LaPoma, Rob Nato, myself, Andrea Folsom, and Norm Kupel. With that, I'm going to go ahead and open up the public hearing. Mike,
Yep.
do you have anything you want to add to this?
Well, I was going to speak briefly. I mentioned it at the work session last week that we had 2 pumps fail at Harold Martin School in regard to our septic system. I can certainly bring Jim up if you want to know more of the details. That's why he's here this evening. We have a couple things going on. That both pumps, well, initially we had almost a near overflow. That's identified, and then from there we had it evaluated, and both pumps need to be replaced. So.
Okay. Before I open up to the public, any questions or clarifications needed from the board?
Was this related, I remember last year at some point there was like a crazy overflow issue that wasn't inside the building but was external, that was like one of the drainage things,
Totally different. So that was the external drainage. This is where all of our stuff flows into. So the pumps had died. So different. They are evaluating it. We put in an insurance claim to protect ourselves. There was a lightning storm, may have struck it, not know, but Jim submitted all that information to the insurance company for evaluation. So if there's a change of it, we will report back to the board, but as of right now, we don't anticipate it.
Okay.
Great.
Any other questions? All right, I'll go ahead and open it up to the public. Any public comment? No? Giving it a minute. All right, I think we're good. There's no apparent public comment on this. Again, this is exactly why we put money away in our building repair and maintenance fund. So I'm glad that we're able to go ahead and use that. So I'm going to go ahead and look for a motion to approve the withdrawal of funds from the school district building repair and maintenance fund for the septic system repair project at Harold Martin School for up to $15,000.
So moved. Second.
Okay, any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. And I'm going to go ahead and close this public hearing. And
Thank
we
you.
will reconvene for a joint committee meeting in 10 minutes.
All right. Thank you. Mr. Rizicki, thank you.
I hear us loud? I think I do. I definitely hear us loud. Thank you. All right, I am going to go ahead and call to order this joint meeting of the Hopkinton Select Board and the Hopkinton School Board. I'd like to thank the Select Board for coming and joining us here at the Middle High School today. We have in attendance, I'm going to go ahead and introduce all of the people at this giant table. So first we have Kara Johnson. I don't know your exact title, I'm sorry.
I don't either most days. Administrative assessing assistant.
Beautiful, administrative assistant extraordinaire. We've got Neil Cass, our town administrator, Thomas LaPoma, Stephen Whitley will be joining us momentarily, Jeff Donahoe, Ken Trom, which is the Select Board Vice Chair, Sabrina Dunlap, our Select Board Chair. And then on the school board side, keep going around, we have Dulcie LaPoma. Jim O'Brien will not be joining us this evening. He's unable to make it. Rob Nato is our school board vice chair. My name is Andrea Folsom. I am the school board chair. Norm Goupel. And then we have with us Mike Flynn, our superintendent. I'm blanking on your name, Mike. Michelle Clark, our business administrator. Jody Condon, our administrative assistant extraordinaire. Noah, I'm blanking on your last name. Ephraim, thank you. I can't see it from here. And Flo Dappas, who are our two student representatives. So this is exciting. I'm reading off of a different agenda than I normally do, so I might fumble through this a little bit more. Are there any additions or deletions to the agenda this evening? No? I don't think so either. So we're going to go ahead. I already did our brief introductions. But I'm going to open it up for any comments from the Hopkinton School Board and Hopkinton Select Board. Any comments this evening? No? Norm has a comment.
I always have
Of course you do. I love it.
I know. So it's great to have a meeting with you guys. I want to say thank you for all you do for our town, and it's always a pleasure going to your meetings. You know it's a tradition. Whenever we have a joint meeting and I'm in attendance, I always bring something for you guys to eat. So Autumn worked very hard last night on the stove, made us bake cookies. So since Tom really loves food, I'm going to start it with him down there. So. And if you see Autumn walking around someday, just tell her thank you for the cookies. So they're freshly baked. That's it.
It's a great comment.
I'll thank Norm.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you very much. Any other comments before we get into it? This is going to be great. All right, I think we're ready to move on for items for discussion. Looks like first up is confirming annual meeting dates. Well, I guess we're going to go ahead and confirm our annual meeting dates. So the one that worked for us for the school district meeting was Saturday, March 11th. With the town meeting following the Saturday after on March 18th, 2023. Does that work for everybody?
I think so.
Yep.
Yeah. Can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
So when do the warrants have to be set, just so I know we've talked about this in subcommittees, but.
The warrants need to be set to, is there a specific date? I know we try to get them set as
So
early as
there-
possible.
It's 20 days before the
Okay.
meeting. Things need to get posted. That's the MS 27 or MS 7, and then the,
But ours will also be set prior to going to the budget committee for town, so
Yep.
we'll be far ahead of that timeline.
The budget committee public hearing is the second week of February. So.
Oh, great.
So we'll have some time.
Madam Chair, would you like a motion to approve these dates?
That sounds lovely.
I'll move we approve the school district annual meeting on Saturday, March 11, 2023, and the town meeting the following Saturday, March 18, 2023.
Good. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. All right, moving right along. Next up on the list is George Park. So as folks might know, so George Park is a town park, but the school district is allowed to use it, which is wonderful. That's where you find our softball fields and field hockey. But we understand that there are some plans for George Park, so we wanted to get a little bit of an update on what those look like, and just have, I know this is sort of an ongoing discussion between the town and the school about George Park, so just a continuation of that perennial discussion.
Yeah, so Neil put together this timeline for us, and I don't remember now, it must have been like 5 years ago, maybe?
17.
Yeah, okay. So 2017, so this has been discussed sort of on and off for a long time, and sort of overhauling George Park. And so in 17, a group of people, I think largely driven by a group of people who are very into seeing an actual track go in, came to us and presented sort of like a fresh plan, and then we took that and came up with this timeline, which you can see goes out to 2030 to complete. So we've been plugging away, and as you guys know, we've split a couple things with you so far. I think, I don't actually recall what we've completed totally, but I know they've done some like leveling to the fields and worked on some drainage issues. So the idea was to get stuff done first that needed to be done before we can move on to upgrading other elements. And I just lost my thought. I had something else I was going to say on it. Anyway, so here's the plan, and there is sort of strategy behind things being in the order that they are. And, oh, I know, I was going to say, I think last year at this meeting, I want to say Jim, since he's not here, I think it was Jim, who suggested maybe having like a little committee get together and just, I can't recall exactly what the purpose would be, but just to like stay on top of George Park issues, but that I don't think ever actually happened. But anyway, Neil, I don't know if you have any other.
Sure, so in 2017, this was an engineering study. There is an engineering plan. And we've updated the numbers, although the further away you get from today, the probably more off the numbers could be at this point. And this is how it's placed in our CIP plan at this point. In all honesty, the track largely is just stuck in there as a placeholder because that was never formally decided on. There's been talk about a three-way split between the town, the school, and private donations, but I don't think anyone committed to that, and it's one of those things that just kept sort of getting pushed off. So right now, it's listed for 2030, but that's more of a placeholder than anything.
Neil, was the track part of the engineering schematic, if you will, that was done?
It was.
So I know with that project, it's always been, how do you make it fit without distorting everything else that's going on? So this schematic is in place. There's possible to put a full-size track in with what you've got planned.
That's correct.
Really?
I don't know.
That's
So it'd
the
be
engineering plan.
It envisions moving the tennis courts up to where the parking for Bloodfield is across the roadway.
Yeah, it does move the tennis courts totally. And it does readjust all the other fields, so too.
So I guess that was my question, because I recall that plan of moving the tennis courts and the reorientation of some of the fields. So the timeline seems like, is this assuming that those things are going to happen?
It does. And this is kind of the order they have to be done in,
Okay.
which is one reason the track is last. Not just because that was the most expensive.
So it's being split 3 ways. Is private just through like a fundraiser, or is it through a specific group, or do they want to be anonymous? How is the private part?
There was a group interested, and I think that's as far as it's gotten at this point.
So
There's
bring it
no
up with-
firm plan or thought beyond that.
Was
Was that the public hearing many years ago when they wanted to have that track, Sabrina, and the select board said no? To that proposal.
Well, I think that the meeting you might be remembering is the one in 2017. There was a group of interested people involved with track
Okay.
who were part of those meetings. And I recall they came up with this idea of the three-way split.
Okay.
But that is, I think, as far as it's gone.
That was George Sable and Zach Emerson. Scott Zipke may have been involved, because I think there was a soccer field planned for the center of this track in some way, shape, or form.
Scott was involved in the turf field warrant article that came in, but that was separate from
That was prior.
this. But there is a soccer field in this plan.
I would like to, I'd love to do a joint field committee amongst the town and us. I'd say the use that we use and how you guys maintain and manage, I think it'd be great to I've never been a part of it, how about that? And I'm still learning how the town owns it, but we use it. And so I think that field committee would help at least lay groundwork for as we move forward in some of this.
I wonder if this needs to be a board level committee or not. You know, I wonder if it would be helpful to have a committee that included Jim, Rizicki, yourself, you know, Neil, Dan, would it be Dan?
And probably Paula.
Yep,
Yes,
Paula, yeah.
absolutely.
And your Dan Mazzurri.
Yes, yes. All Dans would be a part of that committee. So, yeah.
Can I ask a question? Because I actually haven't spent a lot of time at the field since the 90s. Are the restrooms still in the green building, or is that, so that's the restroom? And then where is the well and pump house, or is that the same thing?
The well and pump house is over closer to the tennis courts.
Yeah, there's a building there.
About 7 years ago, we put in a well, so we weren't
Makes
using
sense.
Duke Village
I don't know
water.
where it is. Got it. Okay, cool.
So that's there. And the plan calls for actually moving the restrooms to a more centrally located
That's
spot.
more accessible. Okay. Would we keep that building for a snack shed, for example?
I think most of the other buildings are gone.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting.
The only sticking point I have, a question is, you know, in 7 years, what is the actual cost gonna be? Right now, it's, you have it listed at $975, and with the cost of inflation and everything else that's happening, could that number?
It'll be more than that.
Yeah, so,
But I understand that's just
I don't think I'm out on a limb
That's not
saying
set in
that.
stone.
Yes.
Right, this is not,
This is
that
not-
track
that's-
is not set in stone, however.
The
correct?
track.
that's all right.
No, yes.
So once it's set in stone, then have better price and discuss who's
Okay.
paying what and stuff.
If it is ever
I mean,
set
I
in
think,
stone.
query what would need to happen to set it in stone. I think, I'm just speaking for myself, I think I'd want to see some of the private funding be
Yeah.
fairly concrete and committed. Because this is going to be a big ticket item to fit into the capital improvement plan.
Would you guys like Neil and I at our next meeting to lay the groundwork for a field committee? Field work group? I'd like to call it a work group more.
I just think it's really important we're clear what the role of that committee is.
Yeah.
And my understanding from, or my memory from last year's joint meeting is that one of the ideas behind the joint school and town meeting was to deal with maintenance issues, and that some of those have been sort of ironed out in the interim. And so unless there's a specific sort of concern that's still ongoing, you know, I agree with Neil that, you know, we just want to make sure that whatever is formed has a real clear sort of purpose to it.
Can I ask two other questions? So one is the Park Avenue fencing on track for completion for this October? 'Cause that's
Supposed to
exciting.
be done by the end of the month, yes.
That's exciting. And then do you get, like, is the town able to capture any revenue from like rec leagues or the school or anything else? Like, cause like, I have zero idea if this is just something that's a sunk cost for the town, which is wonderful if it is, and thank you so much, but,
So probably about 12 years ago, it was decided that the town and school wouldn't exchange funds.
okay,
So since that point, that hasn't happened.
okay. And then do that, any of the other recreational teams, like,
They charge for out-of-town users.
For the out-of-town
that
users, they
do
pay, yeah, like
Tournaments
some
on
of
a
the other-
weekend, that
yeah.
sort of thing.
okay,
And everybody, including the men's softball league, provides us a damage deposit at the beginning of the year.
okay, all right. So like a security deposit, okay. That's amazing, thank you.
Sorry,
Go ahead.
like a follow-up question. So everything on here is on the CI, the current CIP plan?
Correct.
Except for, I mean, the track is a placeholder. But so effectively, all this stuff is being accounted for in the CIP warrant articles.
Correct.
And if we did absolutely nothing, these things would just be happening over the course of the next 10 years?
Correct.
Cool. Okay.
Although as those numbers come in,
Right, they'd be
there's
different.
lots
But
of adjustments.
I mean, like, if no one has a problem with this list, we don't actually have to do anything. And these things would theoretically get done over the next 10 years.
The skate park, is that additive on top of everything else that's in here?
It is,
Okay.
and that's a relatively new addition. It hasn't really had any discussion yet.
Okay.
And I wanted to footnote that because it was submitted this year, so
Okay.
there will be discussion coming. up.
Yeah, because I was gonna ask what the timing was for that in conjunction with all these other things, and it sounds like that's just yet to be determined so far.
So I wanted first thank you guys for working with us on the fencing. That was great. We're excited that that's happening. I also wanted to ask, we've done some work in just trying to improve accessibility of our buildings. And I know one thing that comes up as a question is the ramp leading down to the park. Can you give us a little bit of an update on, I thought that it was somewhere in the plan to either move the ramp or update the ramp. Can you give me a little bit of insight into that?
I think hopefully as part of next year's project,
Okay.
that would be done because we need access anyways to do that, so that would be the logical time.
Excellent. Okay.
So is this like an ADA ramp, or is this just a ramp?
If we're gonna do a ramp, it needs to be ADA compliant.
Do you have a sign out there saying that's not right now?
If you
There's
need
some people who've used it and have fallen over not realizing that it's not compliant, just for,
What's there now is largely a path down
yeah.
here.
Yeah, it's not a real ramp.
Yeah.
I wouldn't even say it's a ramp.
Or a slide?
Yeah. Excellent. Well, thank you so much for bringing this. I think it's really helpful for us to get our eyes on and just to have a more clear understanding. I know that oftentimes we get asked questions about the field and people think that we have all the answers, but we don't, as it turns out. And I know you guys, I'm sure, also get questions that you need to send people our way. So I appreciate having a more full understanding. Was there anything else, any further discussion about this?
I just have one question about the fence that's going in. What did you decide about location? Is it in the same spot, or is it gonna be in a little bit, giving a little bit more elbow room there where cars park? What's
Same spot.
same spot?
Oh, yeah, I guess that was a question as to whether we could like push it in 4 feet so people could
I'm
park.
not sure that, I don't think we had any discussion on that, so it hasn't gone in.
It did not,
yet,
it did not
so
come to
we
you
can-
guys through our,
So my thought on that, and when you think about the orientation, the field hockey field and the space that's on the other side, and the issues that the town has had with parking there and its proximity to the street, you have space, I think, to move that fence 3 feet in and do away with a lot of your problems with parking. It would give cars a little bit more, I mean, they're off, right? But now it's tight to the fence and people are opening their door into, unfortunately, people don't do the Dutch door open here in the US. So that would solve a lot of your issues. It would also help with the issues in the wintertime when parents decide to pick their kids up in other places than where they're supposed to pick their kids up, giving you a little bit more space.
We'd have to look closely at the engineering plan to make sure that we don't put it somewhere that throws off the entire
Yeah.
rest of the plan. But we could sort of.
Excellent. Anything else on this?
It's exciting.
It is. Yeah, thank you very much. Great, now I get to really just toss it over to you, Sabrina, with the
All right.
town initiatives.
Houston Barn update, I think Neil's going to give us an update on that.
So as you know, last year at town meeting, funds, ARPA funds, as well as a small bond were approved for Houston Barn. It's to stabilize the building, basically raise it up, put a new foundation on it, and repair the structure so that it doesn't fall down. Last week, we did test pits around the building, and the engineer is working on that. And the plan is construction should begin in the spring. And so by this time next year, it should be complete. It should be stabilized. The barn, if you've been in it, is empty, which is pretty amazing considering how much stuff was in there, so.
Where did it all go?
A lot of it was not worth keeping. There were, I think, 52 catchers, sort of things that, none of them had straps. So after that was done, and we do have some storage containers that are by the library.
Yeah. Cool.
So hopefully, a little nervous about the costs going up as we go through that, but other than that, we're in good shape there.
What's the long-term vision for the barn? I mean, we're stabilizing, we're like, I recall like when we decided to buy this many, many moons ago, and, you know, there was discussions then about its integrity and its use, and like, what's the vision?
Well,
Is there a vision?
I think there's several visions. There is a committee that's working on it, and the idea is to get, we're doing enough to get it stabilized and like functional. And then I believe there will be further discussion about what can we do above and beyond that, and some of that might come in the way of like voting for more money at town meeting or people raising money. Depending on who you ask, I think some people have very interesting and creative ideas for it, but I think for now, the idea is to get it functional, stable, and continue using it the many ways the town has always used it. And keep it there as a beautiful historic site.
Like a lovely wedding facility.
Yeah, you're not the only one who's thought of that. So there is a committee that meets regularly, if you're interested. Thanks, Neil.
Any other initiatives? That's the main one. Keep
That's
on,
the main
keep it
one.
on. Excellent. So I can kick to us with school district initiatives. We have nothing, just kidding. So we have a couple of things we're working on this year. So the three main things we're working on this year, first, just an eye to safety again. I think this is an ongoing issue, but you know, recent events, especially Uvalde, have kind of reignited this. There's also some federal grant matching funds that we're taking advantage of to try to continue to make our schools as safe as possible for our students and staff. So that's been a big focus for us this year. We are also continuing to focus on moving our budgeting to a base budget or a zero balance budget, and away from a fund balance budget. So that's work that we began last year. It's work that we're continuing this year. And then we have several committees that are very active, including our newly formed curriculum committee, our safety and security facility committee, policy, facilities, finance. We've got a bunch, and our energy management steering committee. So that work is ongoing, but I would say still a big part of the work that we're focused on this year in a variety of ways. So those are just quick updates on us. Do we have anything more you wanted to add to that, Mike?
No. Safety and security are a big part for us.
I want to throw something in there in the safety security realm. This is just at the thought stage, but Harold Martin School, single entrance exit, which creates all kinds of problems from not only a safety and security perspective, but just the daily operation of the school. So is there a way to create a secondary exit in some way, shape, or form? I don't know if it's viable, the engineering, but to have an exit that drops out onto Fieldstone. Something to think about, I think, and obviously would fall on the town side. We probably have some resources internally that could look at that. But I think for everyone, it would improve the flow of traffic in the morning considerably, in the afternoon. And whether that secondary exit became something that was for buses or for parents, but some dynamic not to create that juggernaut that happens for that 40 minutes a day, 20 minutes in the morning, 20 minutes in the afternoon. And then my other, unfortunately, mind goes to the thought of crisis situations where we now have a bottleneck with no other way to access that building. So, food for thought. I know such a conversation I've had casually with Jim Rizicki about, and just putting it on the radar screen.
Sure, I have just a couple of things, since we're on the school side, to discuss with you guys. Last year, we had a discussion, or a year before, we talked about an agreement with the fairgrounds in order to use their facility. Not inside the fairgrounds, but the what do you call it, behind that?
Like the actual land?
Yeah, the land behind for cross-country and for Nordic. I would like to have some direction on how this school district can work with the fairgrounds to reach an agreement in order for us to use that. The reason to use that is for the safety of our students. Them running around, in the streets is a safety issue there. And also when there's a meet here in Hopkinton, Houston Fields is completely packed. High Street is completely a log jam, and it's a risk of being an accident, people coming in and out of there. So for me as a board member, I'd like to have some direction from the select board how we can bridge a gap and have an agreement with the fairgrounds.
So I don't know if you guys already have an agreement with the fairgrounds, or if that's something that we would need to discuss with them directly.
So you haven't talked to them yet at all?
I'll be honest with you, previous administration mentioned it, but it was in our joint meeting last time, and it didn't really get any traction, and I would like to see traction on it.
I'm going to speak anecdotally because I don't have direct knowledge, but my understanding is that the school district has had conversations with the fairgrounds. Some of the outcomes of those conversations in terms of athletic use are cost prohibitive. So Franklin Pierce uses that area for very, very large collegiate meets, but their day use fees are quite high. So that's sort of a typical pattern that we've all seen with the use of the fairgrounds over time when it went through its transition 15 or so years ago. So it's coming to an agreement that is not one that says, yes, you may use it, but at a cost that's reasonable for what we're asking. And right now, I don't think that that's the case in terms of high school athletics to be there. I'm just going to check. The reference to Nordic, that is a separate situation. Blackwater Nordic has an agreement with the fairgrounds. They have a contract for 5 years. We're in the second year of that contract. I'm no longer on that board, but because affiliated with that club. So,
I guess I think our agreement with them is by virtue of a settlement that the town reached with them. And so I guess, I support, I totally support the school being able to use that field and not have to pay, the high price. But I don't know how to, I don't have any great ideas about how to compel the fairgrounds to sort of deal fairly with the school. because our agreement with them is by virtue of a settlement, you know, we don't have a whole lot of sort of leverage with them. And so I think that, yeah, you would probably be just stuck sort of negotiating with them.
Is the Blackwater agreement, quote unquote, reasonable?
We have an agreement. Part of it is very reasonable. I'll leave it there.
I mean, I'm happy to try, I have talked to basically like the head of the nonprofit there that we deal with, and just to be clear, because I think some people think the town controls the fairgrounds, and we do not. It is not town-owned land. It is a separate nonprofit that owns and runs that. And as Stephen mentioned, our agreement is quite limited, but I think we try to work with them in good faith and have built up some goodwill, and so I'm happy to the extent it would be helpful to try to facilitate conversations with people there. But, I mean, ultimately it is up to them, but I'm happy to chat further about that.
Thank you.
Excellent.
Appreciate it. And then I had one other thing. I know Sabrina and I think Ken have been appraised of this. I know it's a state thing regarding some signage over at Mr. Mike's for our students crossing the crosswalk there. I'm sure the state's already been notified of something because it's their discretion. The question that I've been asked quite a bit, has there been any type of speed study done there recently?
I don't know if there's been a speed study, but I do think that there have been, we talk about it in EDC,
Traffic counts?
yes, at least.
Central New Hampshire Regional Planning actually was there last week doing traffic counts
Yeah.
in that study. And we are trying to get that whole intersection and that whole section into the 10-year plan. So we were there with an engineer from Central New Hampshire last week too, looking at that. So, but the state 10-year plan is, you're lucky to get in year 10. So it's not something that is going to change overnight, unfortunately.
So they're aware of it.
So Chief Hennessy, and I met with Chief today. Interesting fact, Harold Martin doesn't have, I'm gonna use human terms and not all the other things, it doesn't have road frontage because it's only an entrance and exit and because it sits so far back. So that's some of the things we're running into in regards to blinking lights and all of that. So we're in that process of trying to do short term. Obviously, as Neil said, 10 years is a long term, but we're trying to work with the state on some of those, putting an appeal in, essentially, you have to, I forget the amount of distance you have to have in order for it to be classified as front. So I'm working with Chief on that.
Thank you very much.
But we can't,
Can we just put signs in?
right, can we just put signs in if we pay for it and we're not altering the road? Yeah.
Yeah, without state approval. We can't put our signs.
I can't, yeah, what kind of signs?
Yeah.
So I can't change the speed limit without the permit.
The speed limit's already 25 miles an hour right there.
It's just like a crossing notice that they, like, students might
There's
be
just
crossing.
like, the speed limit's already 25, it's not gonna get lower.
Just signage. I mean,
Right.
what signage do we have jurisdiction that we can do that doesn't need to go through the state?
No, but I'm saying is like, my gut is if we just said, hey, state, can we pay for this and put signs that you would put anyways in your 10-year plan?
We take care of it.
We'll just do it. Like, I don't know why they wouldn't say yes. Maybe they'd say
You
no.
don't?
But, I mean,
We're all
Mr. Mike's, yeah.
no, I know, I mean, like, if someone goes out there in the middle, sign down.
We wouldn't do that though.
No.
We actually put up directional signs near 89 directing to the business district, and they were all taken down. So you really do need to follow.
Right. But I mean, I'm curious if we propose to them that.
So, and I had a question, I know, I didn't actually realize, I don't know if it's state law or what the law is, but that during school hours in the school zone, it's 25. And that is not marked on Main Street anywhere.
So we're working on all 3 school zones right now.
Okay.
So just to clarify that, as Rob said, what part of town are we on? All 3 of them we're working on, because the blinking light it's antiquated, it's a little bit outdated, and as I've said, it's typically you'll have, before a school zone starts, you'll have the light up sign with the bright white lights now, and it says at that point, and then when you exit, it tells you when you exit. So we're working on all 3 school zones right now.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Great.
But 2 out of the 3 are state highways,
Yes.
state roadways, not highways.
Well, actually, and we're having the greatest success with this campus and Maple Street. So,
Oh, 3 out of 3, that's right.
3 out of 3.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, we're all,
So say.
it's all.
Excellent.
Thank you.
All right, sure. Anything else on our side? No? All right. Do you guys have any other questions for us on our school initiatives? No? Super. All right, moving right along to budget items. So Mike, I'm gonna pass this to you. So our school district drivers.
yeah, so we're still pretty early on in our process right now. If you want to stick around, oh no, you're going to your own meeting. I was gonna say, if you want to stick around, I'd say we'd have some definitive answers as we move through the month of October here. But initially, the things that we talked about last week at our first work session were utilities, transportation, really not a lot of things that we have, special ed. So there's not a whole lot of bells and whistles, so to speak, that we're looking to move forward. It's more about maintaining what we're staring at in regards to fixed costs, so.
When you say transportation, is that like school bus contracts?
Yeah,
Okay.
so fuel,
Fuel, yeah.
yep. Special ed transportation, yep.
So we're required to, if diesel is above a certain amount, we are required to pay the difference. And so with fuel
Is it
costs
308?
being high, we were able to avoid it last year. They did not charge us for it, which was wonderful for the district and taxpayers, but they're not doing it this year. They're charging us, so.
Okay.
And last year we ran 1 less bus.
We did for a period of time because of limited bus drivers.
So it's great we have full staffing,
Right.
but that obviously equates to a cost. We're running all 9 this year. Plus special ed.
8, right, yeah.
Plus, okay.
Yeah,
I think
plus
of
the special,
special
the
ed.
special ed's the 9,
Yeah.
yep.
Great. Any other questions you guys have for us on our drivers? Budget drivers this year?
Can I include a quick note?
Absolutely.
We've also applied for grants for electric school buses and for like a few different things in the school safety realm, just so that everyone has visibility. Those grant dollars are hard to come by, and it largely comes down to the type of community and school that you are. And we don't actually control the bus install for a student, obviously, but we are actively working.
We applied for
Sam,
$3 million on electric buses,
Yeah,
hoping to get 1. Essentially, you apply for the whole fleet, and then it feels like districts are getting 1, maybe 2.
One bus,
One
not
bus.
$1 million.
Yeah, 1 bus, maybe 1 bus. And then in regards to the safety grant, we applied for about $150,000 for stuff like that. Hoping,
and we basically got pushed to the next cycle, right?
Yeah.
So, we're working to defray costs. But we'll see if it shakes out.
Great. All right. Back to you guys, your drivers.
Budget.
I can almost say the exact same thing.
Yeah.
Department head budgets are due on Thursday this week. But in conversations we've been having, it's fuel costs. The diesel we use to plow the roads and do all that is pretty high. Trying to keep competitive salaries. We're fortunate that we're at full staff. Most towns are not at full staff, especially DPW staff is hard to keep. We were down police officers, 3 police officers for a while. We are at full staff. Our final one is getting close to the end of the academy, so that is good. And the cost of our capital items, vehicles that are scheduled to be replaced are coming in substantially higher if you can get them. Last year, we needed to replace a 1-ton truck, and there's just not a 1-ton truck available, so we are seeing that. station, which is down in Riverway Park. So those things are happening. Largely, it's the same, the costs are just up to do the exact same thing that we did this year, so.
Any questions, comments?
I wanted to add one other, I don't know if it would be called an initiative or not, and hopefully it'll be approved in an hour, that we're going to be hopefully reestablishing an energy committee in town that will not only be looking at conservation in general, but also installation of solar arrays on town-owned property, looking at community implementation of community power for our residents in commercial, industrial, potentially, what to do with the use of the town owns the hydro dam at the Kentucky. The lease expires in a year. It's been a 40-year lease, so we haven't looked at it in a long time. And that would be another thing the committee would potentially be looking at, what to do, just to renew it or do something else. Potentially look at installation of electric vehicle charging stations, energy efficiency on town-owned properties, and just educating the public on energy and energy conservation. So if it's established with this kind of a charge, it's going to be a very large committee.
Can I ask a question, just curious? Is there any incentive to private landowners for solar arrays in the town?
There's a tax break, is it the first 35,000 assessed value?
I think it's 25.
25?
But that's off the added value of the system.
And there have been, I'd say, quite a few town residents that have added solar arrays.
I'm thinking of places like the old bioenergy, that field area, which I'm not quite sure who owns that at this point.
That is being looked at right
That
now.
would seem like a logical place.
Some of that is floodplain as part of the
Right.
dam, but you can, provided the solar is up high enough, you can put that in that place, so that's actually kind of a perfect place for that.
Cuts you a great deal on charging your electric bus.
Yeah, that sounds great. Need it. Well, we have our new energy steering committee, so to the extent that, I know at some point we'll be talking about joint expenditures, but if there's ever stuff that we can work on together, we're bidding stuff out.
I mean, that would be great, and well, because we haven't even established the committee
Right.
yet.
I know, it's brand new.
If a representative of your committee
Yeah.
wanted
Yeah.
to join ours, that would, be a great fit.
And-
You're talking to the chair right
You
now
are.
of the committee.
Yeah.
Yep.
And Jim Rozicki, who is our new facilities director, just built the all net neutral green middle school in Oyster River. So that was an entirely new build, but he knows a lot about, I would say, at least from the building perspective, a lot of different energy options if you're looking at other stuff. So he's a great resource too. But yeah, I would love to talk anytime.
Yeah, I've been talking informally to different individuals I know in town that have expertise in
Yeah.
different areas, whether it's solar or dams or whatever,
Awesome.
trying to twist their arms to go on the committee.
Exactly. That's really exciting.
That's great.
You got a volunteer right there.
Sabrina is pointing to you.
Another committee for you.
That's awesome. That's really cool.
Excellent. All right, anything else for town drivers? Thank you. All right, moving on to capital expenditure planning. I'm not quite sure who to send this one to.
So this is, I would say it's supposed to be CIP, does that sound right?
Yep.
Right. Do you want to take it, Dulce, or me?
Sure, yeah, so one of the things that, with Jim, who's awesome, who's our new facilities director, one of the things that we're trying to do is we've had, I'd say, visibility Michelle into like 2030, 2035 really, but we're trying to sort of a couple of our goals is that we're trying to reforecast what our actual planned expenditures will be for the building, knowing that stuff springs up, like the public hearing we just had, but to also try to figure out if we can look at getting to a maintenance schedule that is a little bit smoother, so we're not having these huge peaks and valleys that could lead to bonding or huge excessive amounts, but also look to stabilize the tax rate. And the other part of that would be that hopefully we could work with the town, and we just started presenting to the town CIP last year. There's a lot more work that we hope to do there, but so that if you guys are looking at a road bond or other things, that we could try to offset, so we're looking at the total tax rate impact for everyone in town, from both a short-term year on the docket warrant perspective, as well as how those rates compound, especially with bonds, but also that if we're looking at like paving, that we're able to do a joint contract so that maybe we can work with Dan and DPW if we're doing paving work at the school or otherwise. So we could add to maybe bring costs down a little bit. Does that make sense? That was a lot.
Yeah. We've talked for years in the budget committee of trying to, sync the needs of both entities together and try to smooth things out.
So statutorily, the CIP committee is responsible for all 4 entities.
Yep.
The town, the school, and the 2 precincts. So they kind of should be coordinating
Yes.
that to some, obviously both of these boards have
Yeah.
ultimate authority, but.
Yeah, and we're
to do
hoping that if we deepen that relationship, and if we also move to a format that uses a little bit of what the town uses, then that can help them sort of get up to speed. And then there's a user-friendly piece that's looking at the actual work.
And if you're updating your formats, we're happy to take information and update ours at the same time. So.
Cool. You got it.
Nailed it.
Yeah,
Great.
but it's really exciting for me.
Excellent. So anything else on CIP? Does that make sense? I think really as much as we can work together to get things as, for both town and school at the lowest cost as we can, since ultimately, when we all ask for taxpayer money, it's coming from the same pot. So I think that that's an excellent thing that we can strive to do. And so we're really trying. I know, kind of like you said, it's been a perennial conversation, but I think this was just more of our recommitment to it and really trying to do some deeper work to expand on that. So, great. Anything else we would like to talk about before I open up to public comment? No? Man, so quiet. I'm used to a rowdier board. All right, well with that, I'm gonna go ahead and open up the meeting to public comment. If you would like to present any comments to the joint boards, you're more than welcome to step on up to the microphone. Just need your name and address, and you're welcome to come on up. Please try not to rush the microphone. All right, seeing no public comment, is there anything else that we need to do? I don't believe so. So we are going to go ahead and close this joint public meeting. Thank you guys again so much for coming here. We really appreciate it. The select board is going to continue their meeting in room number, I don't quite remember, but just down the hall.
Rob, what's your room number?
202.
Room 202. So they will be doing that. And the school board, we're going to take just a 5-minute break, and then we will be reconvening for our regular school board meeting as well. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you, Noel.
the show on the road. Well, you know. All right, I'm gonna let folks sit down. We're good. Excellent. Oh, I can always tell because I hear myself much louder. Thank you. All right, I'm going to go ahead and call this regular meeting of the Hopkinton School Board to call to order on Tuesday, October 11th, 2022, at 6:30 p.m. following our joint school board meeting. We still have a quorum present, so we've got Norm Kupel, Dulcie LaPoma, Rob Nato, and myself, Andrea Folsom, along with Mike Flynn, Superintendent, Michelle Clark, our business administrator, Jody Condon, our assistant extraordinaire, I believe I renamed you, and Flo Dappas, our student representative. We're going to go ahead and start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, so we have a few sets of minutes to approve tonight. The first set are from our public hearings, and we held two separate public hearings. I'm going to go ahead and ask for a motion for each public hearing separately, just to be on the safe side. So these are from September 20th, 2022. Is there a motion to approve the public hearing to approve the ESSER funds?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Is there a motion to approve the meeting minutes from the public hearing regarding the withdrawal of funds from the school district budget building, from the school district building repair and maintenance fund?
So moved. Second.
Okay, any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. And is there a motion to approve the regular school board meeting minutes from September 20, 2022?
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right. So we are now at our first public comment portion of the evening. Again, we added in our second public comment so that we would make sure that we had a total of 30 minutes at every meeting available. So is there any public comment this evening? We will have a second public comment at the end of the meeting as well.
Tricia Lambert, 305 Galloping Hill Road. Just a quick question, because we were having a really hard time following along with the last meeting. Was there an agenda for that?
So there was an agenda that had been put into the public folder during the beginning of the meeting at the last meeting.
The public folder online?
Yep.
Okay. Okay. So there was also in your last meeting, there was a lot of discussion with a lot of the documentation that is handed out. Maybe Lauren was able to get the answer. I apologize if I missed it. So having that ahead of time is really helpful for us to follow along. Is that something we can have besides it being posted after the fact?
Yep, and so that was a comment that was brought up to us
Correct.
at the last meeting. We did hear that. We are going to provide paper copies during the meeting
Okay.
for audience members, and then they will be then posted online after to make sure that any notes or anything that need to be removed to protect student privacy are able to be removed.
Okay, because it's just easier for us to see them because you talk about a lot of things with each other and it's hard for us to understand.
Yep,
Thank
we
you.
heard that. Thank you. Any other public comment? No? Okay, great. We will reopen again towards the end of the meeting. Student comments. Flo.
Oh, yes. School's been going well. Today, the Student Advisory Council met for the first time, which is a group of class officers, which is like the class president, vice president, secretary, and treasurer from each class. And then Noah and I from the school board. And we met with Mr. Kelly and Mr. Morrill. And that was our first meeting. excited about it, and I'm excited to see what we can do with the representation in the high school. And Noah and I will also be reporting relevant information from that as we meet more often. So, other than that, we enjoyed the 4-day weekend. Thank you for the professional development day. And the EAC planned a trash cleanup for this Friday. There's also middle school dance then. And finally, there was also some confusion about midterms and finals among students, but I think that's more of a school level thing. So, yeah, and a lot of members of the EAC are excited about the Energy Steering Committee meeting.
Awesome. Excellent.
So,
Thank you.
yeah, I think that's it.
Great. Any questions about that? That sounds great. I look forward to hearing what you end up bringing from that committee.
Yeah.
I think that'll be really great. Board comments? Sorry. that's really loud. No? Wonderful. Let's keep going. All right, moving right on to current business. And we're going to jump right in with our superintendent goals.
Yep, so we're at this time of the year, same as last year. You've had my goals for 3 weeks, so any feedback, any discussion, any comments? If not,
Pull this back up.
I would look for an approval for me to do the work.
Can I ask a question about what would be like table stakes versus like what would go into a goal, basically? But the only thing is, that I could think of, so I thought the communication goals were excellent. I thought that was great. And one of my questions was, you say, can I read out?
Yeah, absolutely.
Identify mechanisms at the school level to increase communication to all stakeholders, to foster increased connection with building and district administration. Is that to IAs, professional teaching staff, all of that, or are you thinking about stakeholders there?
So that actually, I stole that right from the strategic plan.
Great.
So it's literally students, staff, everyone.
Good. And then my other question was, I know this might go hand in hand with Becca, but considering that we have multiple new administrators starting this year, I wasn't sure if there's, like, the table stakes thing would basically be managing to basically help onboard and ensure success of new administrators.
And we can certainly put that in writing. That's the challenge I had,
Right.
Especially now that I've known everyone for a year.
Right.
So the way I frame these is more about a review process as we start to reestablish. So the work is the work, and that's my job. If you want to put that in writing, we certainly can. But these are the ones, these are identifiers for me that at the end of the year, we can connect not only to just my performance, but also how I connect to the strategic plan and how I connect to you guys. So this is more of the formal process.
Mike, my only question is about the complete energy action plan by January 15th. That seems rather, I don't know.
That's our goal, yeah.
Yeah, so that's really close, right? So let's be realistic about that.
Sure.
Should we move that date, or should we retitle that? What do we do?
So the date, again, was taken from you guys. So one of the things was essentially in your goal was to work with the superintendent on that. So I think it's okay, these are living goals. So if we get to January 15th and I don't meet that goal, that would be an evaluative piece of adding so when I reflected for my end of year evaluation for you guys, I put what I hit, what I didn't. I am more than fine with changing it. It doesn't bother me, but I know that committee is gonna get started this week and we could have something. Yeah.
I'd be okay with, if it makes everyone feel comfortable, because I also don't want you to get, like dinged, basically.
Dinged, it's a ding, yeah.
So.
It's what it is.
So you could have it be completed energy action plan draft, like I'm okay with there being like a really good draft that is up for discussion that would be able to guide us as we move through warrants or whatever else, but I feel good that we'll be able to have something together. I don't know if it will be the forever final together, and we know that these documents are living documents, but I just don't want that. I want to be aware that this is a task that will involve multiple people and multiple groups, so like.
Yeah, draft's fine.
I think draft is far more realistic than plan.
Okay.
Yeah, I think draft would make a lot more sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yet I'm on the fence about either like working with your administrative team or,
I can add it. It's a simple one.
yeah. And then, I think identify mechanisms at the school level to increase communication. The only other thing that I would say there, and but like, I don't know if adding the word in presence is something that's important, or is also like, I know when you think about your administrative philosophy, right, like the principals are the principals, and you want to think about empowering them to do their jobs. So I don't want to sort of word there that is too much, and I know you've thought about that, but that would be the only other thing that when I think about
So
it.
it was almost a carryover from my last year goal.
Yeah.
Why don't I add? Okay, I'm trying to think of, because if you want me to enter something in regards to the transitioning to the new team as well as that, it could become its own
Yeah.
bucket. Becomes a bucket.
Well, just because I also think that that's a body of work that like you will do no matter what, but you should also be recognized for at the end of the year, right? Like building that robust administrative team is something that you are working on every week.
Mhm.
And it's a goal that we should call out because we're adding new people that are working to onboard and,
So I'll add a category under leadership, right? And then I'll put subset goals.
Trying to wrap my head around what it is we're saying. So, are you saying presence in the school, like physical presence, or like what are we?
well, I think there's, so I think for me, it's like sort of two things, right? Where it's like last year, I think Mike did a really good job of like realigning the philosophy of the schools to be more principal leadership central when it comes to the buildings. One of the things that we also know is that it's like, we want everyone to get to know Mike also, because I think that's really important. And I think that as the leader of this district, that's really important. And then the second part of that is we also are adding 2 new principals, new facilities director. And so when Mike thinks about building out and managing that team to be a top tier team, that is a management goal in and of itself. A leadership goal for you that you're gonna do, but like we should recognize as just being something that, you know.
So I just added that leadership category, and then I'll add the subset categories of that discussion.
Yep.
Does that sound fair?
Can you just unpack, I think I know what it means, but just unpack it for me. Collaborate with the school board to identify infrastructure needs for financial planning. Can you just unpack that for me a little bit? Like,
So it seems a lot of our discussions this year, even starting from last week, and it can go from Matt's infrastructure to technology to actual physical infrastructure to plumbing infrastructure that we've clearly started to uncover. So infrastructure is a better word for me because it connects to multiple parts, not just a building.
perfect.
Did you want to go back to the leadership, Rob? You were staring at me. You were giving me that look.
Yeah, so this is when you're on the board and you've been a teacher, so you don't want to play the I was a teacher thing, but I'm going to play the I was a teacher thing. And being in, when I was in private school, did I see the headmaster a lot at lunch because we all ate in the same room? But beyond that, no. Hollis Brookline, never saw the superintendent. When I first started here, never saw the superintendent. So I'm not sure that presence in the schools.
I don't think that's the word. I think, sorry.
Yeah, no, so you know what I'm saying? I just think that we've had a style change, for whatever that means. But I don't think that it's a measure of Mike about how much time you're spending in each
Correct.
building physically to connect with staff. How you choose to do that is how you choose to do that.
Well, we've already ingrained some of our practices. We're rotating our meeting schedule to where we're now having meetings in the buildings, so that it allows access, right? And we're doing walkarounds when we're there, so we're already implementing.
I think that connection's a great word, because then it's like everyone can, in whatever the form of.
Yeah, and it's
That
actually
is.
not just a Mike thing, so it'll go under the leadership of the new team. So
Yeah.
we wanted Mr. Rizicki, Ms. Gagnon, Mr. Morrow, all the new ones. It's been a goal of what we're trying to do and establish new practices. So I can wordsmith it so it's not Mike in classrooms. It's,
That's not what I was trying to do.
Sure.
Yeah.
So I will draft that, and then I will look for, in 2 weeks, for you guys to submit that. I'm probably gonna get a head start on the school action plans, since there were no significant changes. Is that fair assessment?
Yeah.
So since there's no significant changes, I'm gonna meet with the leadership team and the principals to develop some school action plans, which you'll see in 2 weeks. That's never happened before either. So they're gonna come to you and essentially almost present goals, but through the school level, and how it'll connect to the strategic plan and so forth and so on.
Amazing.
Awesome.
All right, we'll keep 5 to 10 minutes, right, Mr. Kelly?
Whatever you want.
All right, sounds great. Moving on.
Excellent. Yep. Moving on, committee goals.
Yeah, so this just is gonna go back to some, you'll see in the presentation later, but in regards to structural organization and accountability, I think the board level committees have done a phenomenal job this year of already meeting before October. Actually, some of them met multiple times. We've restructured the website for the folders of each committee. We're gonna track all of that stuff so that it's easy, but I think it's more important for the committees, if you guys know them off by heart, to say the goals out loud, because a lot of times some people don't go and visit the website, right? They just want to be able to watch the video. So if you have an opportunity right now, I would say let's go ahead and read those goals. And then to reiterate that all the meetings have been set from now and through January for all of them. Some of them have slowed up in January, others have met throughout the year, but they are all posted. I know I always use the word the brown calendar, and I don't mean to, but it's, I know, it's the district calendar, but internally, it's all posted there. And Jody has said that she's gonna manage the Excel, I'll call it the Excel sheet for now, for about a month ahead. But I'm also working on Matt to kind of change that format so that it'll eventually look like folders. So a lot of work in progress, but we're definitely trying to become more organized. All right, so if you want to start with CIP?
I can start.
I saw someone.
All right. They're not memorized, so, yeah. CIP, we have 4 goals this year. One is developing a clear and easy-to-read 10-year CIP in presentable format with short and long-term visibility. The format should enable the community to understand and navigate the CIP and should therein build trust between the district and the taxpayers. 2, develop an allocation target of predictive capital needs. 3, build relationships with the town CIP and budget committees. And 4, we will work to diversify our project funding, building and utilizing, but not limited to the following sources: maintenance trust, appropriate and planned operating budget allocations for things like painting, performance contracts, power purchase agreements, grant sources, and community donations.
Perfect.
Can you read number 2 again?
Yeah.
We will develop an allocation target of predictive capital needs.
You want to talk about that one a little bit
Sure.
more?
Yep. So we worked on the wording for this a lot, but it's basically where, what we are trying to get to is a little bit what I alluded to in our last meeting, but for this current audience, is that we're trying to get to an understanding of what would be an appropriate, capital improvement target year over year that would let us get to, the baseline projects we need to do as well as preventative maintenance, so that when we think about attempting to smooth out the tax rate impact year over year, that we can develop a pretty solid number that we feel good about, and enables us to do that, that doesn't put us into a hole.
And it doesn't have the swings, right?
Right.
We didn't want to, one year we didn't want to be up, and the next year we want to be down. We want to target appropriately so that it's I'll call it level funding in regards to CIP.
And that will build in, taking a look at our 10-year plan, what are things that we could possibly look at moving between different years to enable that to happen, looking at percentage goals, per student goals, square footage goals, private, like there's multiple ways that you can sort of triangulate into what an appropriate number would be, and then weigh that with what is realistic for our actual tax rate impact.
Yeah, I guess for me, the hard part about that is the allocate, predict. Okay, this is what we need, and what can we actually get past that's realistic for the taxpayer?
Correct.
And there's going to be arguably a spread there.
That's why it's a goal.
That's a goal.
Because that was our discussion at the last meeting.
Right, and also if this goes back to number 1, where everyone's able to actually ingest all of this information in a way that people who are interested in the way that we're managing our facilities, And that should help get to an understanding of the process and the way that we're trying to do this and the work that we're doing, to quote Mike. And if we are also getting input from town CIP and budget, then there's multiple, before it gets to taxpayers, there's multiple bodies that have looked at it to say, this is appropriate, or tweak this, or do this, et cetera, et cetera. But to your point, yes, we will be trying to build the case in a way that's appropriate and responsible.
Well, I think it's good because then if you've got, your prediction is we need, just using numbers, $400,000 a year, but we feel like we can probably realistically warrant $225,000 a year if down the road we need to bond. We can say this is because of the shortage that we had, and we can choose when to pay for these things, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough.
And this, I would also think that this takes in both the budget and the revenue, so both the expenditures and the revenue side, because I know that there's often confusion with how we use revenue and how we use it to lower the tax rate, and why we may or may not want to use all of it to lower all the tax rate all the time, and the effect on budgets year over year. That if we do that in 1 year, then we all get hit real hard the next year.
Exactly, yep.
Great.
If we have an agreement with the teacher's contract, we have an idea of CIP, we know that we have, every other year is to pay into the state retirement. Is it possible for us, for this board, to kind of get a feel for like the next 2 years on a budget? Say
Can we,
this is what.
so we're getting into the weeds here, I'm gonna recorrect
Well, no,
you guys.
it's-
No,
Well, we're
I-
talking about.
Just save that for the budget discussion.
Yeah, we're.
That's all.
just-
Okay,
Just
all right.
table that till we get there.
That'll be
Yep.
E. We're just on
Yeah,
B.
yeah,
We'll
we're
get
gonna
there.
We're gonna get there.
We're
Yeah.
almost
Okay.
there.
We're just on committee goals.
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't know if that was,
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
so great goals.
very exciting.
Yeah, we're pretty excited.
Excellent. Other goals?
Sure, I'll do finance. So the first one is increase and improve the budget documents and communication for 22-23 school year. So I think we've started that process a couple of years ago, and it continues to get better. There's some talk about different formats we might use. The usual presentation, which is 17 or 18 pages, a one-pager, maybe a trifold, those kinds of things, and how to push that information out. Second goal, provide the school board with a framework to assist the reduction of fund balance as revenue, and also how to educate folks on that, I guess. I'm adding words to the goal here, sorry. 3 is provide clear articulation and substantiate major changes to the operating budget. And again, that could be on the expense side or on the revenue side. And then the last one, provide guidance and recommendations to the board for funding trusts, warrants, and the stabilization of the tax rate. And that's all, folks.
Sounds great. Excellent.
Policy?
Policy is actually taken right from our board goals. So the policy goal is the policy committee will audit Hopkinton School District policies based on administrative review and any statutory changes. So that one's easy.
It's the most thrilling committee.
I think it is. I love it.
I'm just,
It's an interesting,
well, we enjoy policy.
if
most
you like
people don't.
wordsmithing, you like policy. I can also give an update on the Curriculum and Assessment Committee goals. So the Curriculum and Assessment Committee has 2 goals this year. The first is the CNA Committee will present a completed Pathways to Graduation, known as the Hopkinton 20 and Hopkinton 24 proposal to the Hopkinton School Board. We were aiming high, so we said by the end of October 2022. So we'll see if we can get that to us by the end of this month. We're gonna try. Because really, what we would like is we want it moving forward so that by the time they do the program of studies for next year, which always happens much earlier than folks would think, that it's already in place. So that's the reason behind that goal. The second goal is the CNA committee will begin the work to develop Hopkinton standards in every area of study based on Common Core and New Hampshire Ed standards. So this is certainly going to be a full year goal. Basically, once standards have been established in every area of study, and this is K-12, based on what standards are included, Ms. Gagnon will then have, she will have a better way and more focused work on how to oversee and make sure that our curriculum is vertically aligned. So that's that one. Any questions on that? I can moderately answer them. All right. Any other committees? I don't know if safety and security has committee goals.
So
Stay
it's
safe.
typically, so it's a quarterly review of safety and security practices that are occurring. One of the board goals, right, is the safety and security audit and action plan, which I'll update you guys later on, is not safety and security. We want to be very clear on that. Safety and security is based around the safety and security of the campuses. So that's the goal.
Great.
So, and then the EMC,
We'll have goals drafted on Friday that we can share at our next meeting, but one of them at least will be to have an energy action plan draft by 1/15/23.
Excellent.
That's really exciting. Close on.
Great. So all of these goals will end up on the website. I know that we're still adding stuff and moving stuff, but we're trying to make these all available for folks to see. Right. Excellent. And all of our, like Mike said, all of our meetings are on the just hopkintonschools.org main page. All right. Moving on, Mike.
Moving on to
Emergency.
EOP, emergency action plans. Just a refresher, the state changed they're no longer the ones in charge of it. It's now Department of Homeland. Homeland sent out a new template. The deadline changed for submission to October 15th. We were done probably about 2 weeks ago. Jim Rizicki did a great job taking the lead on this with Ms. Brown, Ms. Sindoni, Mr. Morrow. They actually met with Homeland Security on a Zoom call to review our action plans. They said they did an outstanding job, attention to detail. They're in that for review. If you have questions, you can certainly ask. But we are ready to upload tomorrow. But I just wanted to bring to the board in case you had any questions.
Upload to DHS.
Department of Homeland Security, yes.
Yeah.
So these plans are not necessarily made widely public.
It's not a public document, yeah.
Yeah, because they contain sensitive
Sensitive,
security
yeah.
information.
What does the yellow highlighting mean?
I had the same question, and it was an area that, I want to say his name's Neil, brought up, and I believe we were allowed to take it out. So I'll just confirm that with Jim tomorrow.
Okay. These are really extensive.
Yeah, it's next level type stuff on what they did from, I know, Rob, you saw the initial one of what was done prior to, so. He said he'd probably use ours as a template, which is great.
No.
So, do you need a motion from us to approve it?
Nope.
Okay. Perfect.
This is great. I think I appreciate you guys. I know that because of the change, the statutory change, we needed to redo these, but I also think it's wonderful having some fresh eyes and knowing that we have school and town,
Yep.
appropriate folks all in on making sure that our kids are safe, as safe as we can make them.
It's just back to, again, it was a refocus on our safety and security. It was the perfect time. It was perfect timing to redo it.
Yep.
So, all right.
Thanks.
Okay. Moving on to graduation. So Mr. Kelly's here this evening as well. I'm going to kind of introduce the topic for discussion. I sent you guys a memo probably about 3 weeks ago. It's crazy to think this is the time we talk about graduation, but it's the time we're already talking about graduation. And evaluating it as my first time last year here and my experience, it's becoming a little bit more of a challenge within the barn. So I've spoken to all of you, and I'm going to say that there's feelings and facts in regards to graduation, and that's why I wanted it to come to this level. And that's why Mr. Kelly wanted to bring it to this level. Feelings is the barn's outstanding. It's cozy, it's great. Facts are time-consuming, a lot of constraints, They're charging us more money each year. So Chris did a good job of trying to solicit different opportunities if it was an option, whether it be in town. We've also eliminated, since I last spoke to you, we cannot have it on the fields. They have ruled that out as an option. The fields is not an option. Jody explored another place today that is a possibility. So we're looking at all the avenues, and then there's also an avenue of the Concord, help me out, I always mess it up.
Capital Center for the Arts.
Thank you, Capital Center for the Arts.
Why is the field not an option?
If we cannot tent on any of the fields,
This field?
any of them. Mr. Rozicki reached out to the town, and we cannot tent at all.
The town said no?
Town said no.
We just had a meeting this way.
Yeah, but they gave us the answer, like, it's not like a negotiable thing, so that's
That concern about damaging
irrigation, yep. So, really, the discussion, and Chris is here to speak to some of the questions I'm sure you may have. We'd love to hear your feedback, and Chris is here to share what he's been doing with the student body and with the teachers. I would say the facts are it's becoming really challenging to do within the barn. Time and effort, and I know Jody can speak to what she lived through last year as well. It's going to become a significant challenge. We're at a $4,000 price right now to rent the barn with limited access. So I'm opening, I know everyone's, I'll say dipstick. I know where we're going with a lot of this, and I don't want anyone other than to be honest and real so that Chris can hear it, and Chris can certainly share some of his stuff. So, Chris, do you want to add to?
I think everything's in the memo.
Yep. What you see, so.
I think somewhere in the memo was the student feedback and where they were. So I don't know, Chris, can you kind of tell us where the kids are at in terms of what their druthers are?
Why don't you-
Yeah,
there's actually, if you don't mind, there's a mic over there. You get your own mic.
Oh, Mike. It's on. Definitely.
So Ms. Walton, who is our graduation coordinator extraordinaire, her and I have redesigned graduation for the last 3 years and maybe a fourth, depending on where we end up. So 56 students responded to a Google Form survey that she had put together. And about 48% said they like the barn, but understand that times do change. And if we were to move it, would understand. 21% said that they really want to graduate in the barn, and then 30% said they wanted to graduate in the barn, and 21% said no barn. So, like most surveys, you know.
How many kids are in that class?
66, so 10 did not respond. So that was the feedback that we got. There were some other comments that were added to that, but just to support.
Actually, some suggestions of other areas in town.
Some did suggest Capital Center of the Arts. Some suggested the fields, but obviously, in which we looked at, which
Some
cannot.
suggested Gold Hill, but we can't. We have a real parking issue.
Never be able
Yeah.
to park.
But we're all,
And so just so you know, as a building person, this only came up because, one, we were entering budget cycle. Two, we have a 3-year contract that we would have to sign, and you saw the costs associated with that. And it started at $1,500 when we first entered that first 3-year contract. So I don't know where the ceiling is for the fairgrounds to continue to charge us if we were to enter another 3-year deal. What made it easy in the past is dealing with Avalon out of Vermont. Avalon was the company that came down, so they set up all the chairs, they put down the carpet, they set the staging up, the pipe and drape, they did the whole 9 yards. Now that they are out of business, we tried last year. There's just not another business that did what Avalon did for us. So that's hard.
Yeah.
And when you start piecemealing it, prices go up. What I didn't do in that form or that memo was I didn't add a 20% increase to cost over the next 3 years. I mean, that's not a side of my business that I understand. But also trying to find a tent large enough was hard. When Taylor Rental said, yeah, we'll drop it off, but you have to set it up, I'm like, I don't know, set up at 10. I mean, I can, but for camping.
Well, that goes into Jim's staff. you
Yeah,
know.
so, but again, I don't know, setting up a tent that large, what kind of experience they have in doing that either. So I'm open. I mean, I remember when I first started here in Jean Eaton, I asked, by the way, where does graduation happen? She said, the barn. And I was like, we have a barn. Like, I didn't know. And so, I mean, I understand the tradition. I mean, I get it. And it is special. I mean, I don't think that graduation.
And that's why it's at the board level, because this is our, I don't want to make it sound this way, this is our decision. But this is, like, there's a lot of feelings involved. And I've learned that lesson before previously, and one time I painted over a mural, and it did not go well for me.
Not here.
No, not here, by the way, not here. So, I did not here. So this, anytime that, anything like this, it needs to come to this level. I think our recommendation, again, taking feelings out of it, our recommendation would to be relocate away from the barn.
Yes, can I?
Yeah,
do you want
absolutely.
me to jump in? So I'm a graduate, so like, and I know I had this conversation with you and you're like, I don't remember my high school graduation. I 1000% remember my high school graduation and the graduation for the classes before me. And I did not get a graduation ceremony in the barn, and it was down in the field. I am not, huh? There was 10. Yeah. It wasn't the barn. I definitely wasn't the barn.
Oh, I know, it wasn't
Yeah.
a part. I don't remember.
But there's 10, we can work on 10 companies, but I know like a lot. But I am cost sensitive. I don't think that unless we can figure out something with the fairgrounds, it gets us to a place where we're able to lock in a more equitable rate. I'm not super committed to that. What I do feel is emotionally important is that kids graduate in town. And I think that that's really special and wonderful. And I don't know if we can use Harold Martin or Maple Street or figure out the way to do that. And there's parking constraints and everything else, but it feels very special to me to be a kid. A lot of our kids grow up forever in town or come in at an early age, and like there's something that's really nice about being with all your friends that you've been with for 2 or 10 years and having it happen in town. That said, I know that there are benefits to the Capitol Center for the Arts, and that could feel fancy and wonderful, but it feels like it would lose a little bit of like what makes Hopkinton special to me, and that gets again into the emotional part. And I think that if we can figure out how to do it in town in a way that doesn't kill our staff, that is has cost parity, and that is more sustainable, so that we're not rebuilding this operation every single year, then that would be great, right? Like you and Jody and Trish should not be trying to reinvent the wheel every year. Like that's
exactly right.
not fair.
Yeah.
So, but I do care
Right.
about being.
And what really started it was the financial piece.
Totally.
It wasn't for a change in tradition or
Right.
anything along those lines.
Totally.
We were entering the budget cycle, and when Lauren gave me the contract and gave me the numbers, I choked myself. Like, I was like, what? Really? Because what we're getting for $3,000 this year and 3 years out, $4,000 with no improvement to the venue.
Right.
And what we still have to do.
Right.
Is what gave me pause. And so is it time to look at it now and look at the overall cost versus another venue, which is turnkey? And so I get the emotion. I certainly understand that. I've been here 18 years. There's a lot when you walk in and the seniors clap you in and we walk out. I get all that. It's strictly a piece of financial for us. So I'm happy to work with the board and move forward, but as Mike said, we have to start planning now if we're in the barn still.
Can you walk me through, so let's say the total away here is 10,000, right? How much of our budgeting process is paying towards that? The reason I ask that is the parking, right, from the fair, does that go towards any graduation, or is that just for their event?
Some of it will
So
go to
last year, the board directed us to cover the cost for graduation.
Yes, cap and gowns.
Nope, you told us to cover the cost.
Okay.
You said that it was not, the board said it wasn't fair that the raising they were doing,
No, I
they
agree.
were paying for their graduation.
Okay.
That pays for their senior class trip.
Yeah.
Okay, class trip, okay.
And project graduation. No,
Project
that's separate.
graduation.
That's separate.
That's separate.
So those numbers come out of the district budget now.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
fine. So what was the cost last year?
I'd have to go
It-
back
you-
and dig
I-
out those numbers.
So
It-
I mean,
you
'cause when I
remember
look
the
at this,
disaster, well,
they-
the company folded
Oh, yeah.
2 weeks before graduation, so everything,
Well, it folded long before that.
Well, they didn't-
We
they
just
didn't
happened to
notify
find out
us.
by chance when we
Right.
were trying to contact them and
and we
say.
can't talk about that publicly, because that's,
No.
yeah, so.
But when you have to start piecemealing it out, it did cost us more. Like, we used to pay 600 for sound, and then it went up to 1,800. So,
The flooring we had to buy off of where Jody
Right,
found
which
it
you
on
won't be able to
Facebook.
use again.
Some guy found it on
you
Facebook.
can't, that worked great for that one event, but it's not, you can't move it.
We can't use it again.
Oh, it's,
Yeah, so you just can't use it again. And it left such a mess that our custodial staff,
they had to rake the dirt to get the black pellets out of the, yeah.
According to this, Norm, it was $18,411.62.
That sounds about right with all the changes that happened at the end. I think you're right.
So, the barn is quaint, okay? Let's say that. But the acoustics over the years have not always been terrific. The climate control is non-existent. There are years when it's incredibly uncomfortable for everyone. And again, given the finances, I think it's time for a shift away. I'm not necessarily wed to the idea that graduation needs to be in town. I think a lot of schools have their graduations in other places because the facilities are better. Capital Center for the Arts seems like a pretty cool place to have a graduation. My high school, way back in the day in Coventry, Rhode Island, we graduated in the Warwick Musical Tent, which is no longer there. But that was the tradition, and the tradition was this is where we went. So I think those traditions can be created anywhere. And the reduction of stress on the staff and everybody worried about weather and all of those other things seems like a really good alternative to at least try and see how it goes.
Could we compromise? She likes Hopkinton, you're variable if we directed a recommendation of proposals from them, and if they, because I have no idea what venue they could use it.
Proposals from whom?
From them.
Yeah, so the challenge we're running into is the deposit and/or solidifying the date at the Capital Arts Center, right? So we can certainly, and we've been exploring other avenues. It's the challenge of, we've already extended their deadline almost.
Yeah, they've been very
Yeah.
good to work with for now, but.
Yep. They might shut us, I mean, again, they might not have anyone on that date, and that's fine.
In fact, I was
Every
pleasantly
other
surprised
option-
to find out.
Every
that
other
it was.
option in town that we've explored becomes, there's always a challenge.
Yeah.
Whether it's outdoor, whether it's a sizable enough tent, whether we can tent an area, whether it's a parking issue. It's.
Drainage was one we found out today, drainage, bathrooms.
Bathrooms, yeah, so if there was physically something in town, I would absolutely agree, there wouldn't even be a question of pulling it out of town. But when there's just physically nothing that we can do without spending a lot of money on a very large tent, and whether we can even get a tent sizable enough, as well as all the other factors that go along, that you have to get the staging, you have to get the chairs, all of that still becomes a higher expense because we have to piecemeal it now. The town mentioned the new barn by next year, maybe that becomes a factor down the road. I've never been in the inside, I don't know, hopefully that, Rob's shaking his head. So, okay, that's all fine. We've tried to rack our brains for over a month now, trying to be creative. And I wish there was the perfect scenario, and just size-wise, parking-wise, all of those items, it's just been very, very difficult. And what we did deal with last year with the barn, from an emotional piece, that was my daughter's graduation, and it was a nightmare. And it was a lot of work, and it is a lot of work. You also have all the subcommittees that have to, the decorating committees and the cleanup committees and the setup committees, and then half those people don't even show up. And you don't get the help. You get the 2 or 3 parents that do everything, and nobody shows up. And
took an emotional toll on a lot of people last year. And then for a cost that keeps increasing
So then we go with non-10 option, because we've discussed it.
Yep.
Non-10 options are fine until the weather's staring at you and you need a rain date. And again, local, fine, but people have families that travel in, they have parties that are planned, graduation parties, all of that. So say we're gonna graduate on the date, do you know, what's the date again? 17, Chris, looking at you?
The 9th.
9th, so 9, right, so then you either do you do the rain date 2 days before, 2 days after? All of that comes into play. So that's why the Arts Center became a possibility of, it's locked in, we show up, we do our thing.
Is the fairgrounds at all open to negotiation on these prices? I mean, it's going up almost 12% each time. It's ridiculous.
The answer is no, there's not negotiation.
Trying to, this came about because I said to Lauren, I was like, have we received any communication from like, we always have to reach out to them. It's just a lot of administrative work.
And they give us set times too that we can come in and out, which is really hard, because if you are having a delivery company bring in all the chairs and they can only come a certain time, if we ask them to open another time other than what they've given us, we have to pay additional money for them to come unlock the gate, even though there's a maintenance guy that's there every day. So it becomes difficult to also budget for costs too, because we don't know how much extra it will cost us in the end.
Chris, has there ever been a limitation on tickets per graduate in terms of the barn, and would there be a significant limitation on tickets and rent?
No, the only, so if you remember, we give each graduate 4 tickets, that's for the 4 seat. And it's done by lottery, so that will choose which 4 seats in what row. After that, any additional family members, they would sit in the grandstands on either side.
And what would be the situation at the Capitol Center? What's the seating capacity?
It's over 1,000, I think it's close to 1,200, and I don't think we've ever broke 1,000.
We wouldn't have to have assigned seating.
The view, it's raised, right?
It's 2 levels.
It's raised and they have the balcony and then.
They do huge dance competitions in there and everything else, so there's plenty of seating for a 60.
So when I was the director of bands at Concord High School, we would have our concerts there. And in March, Music in Our Schools months, we'd have the entire district there, and there would still be empty seats. And that's Concord, from 3 elementaries, the middle high school, the middle school and the high school performing groups. So this, I mean, I would suspect that we'd be able to fit in there. And if we followed some of the traditions where the students were still up on the stage, which I think we would be able to put 66 students up on that stage. I mean, I would fit a band of close to 100. So no doubt that we'd have enough room up there.
Because we talked about the gym, but, you know, the gym, it's.
Well, the gym is bleachers.
Yeah, it's by the time you set up the chairs, like, they've done a great job of exploring
The
everything.
temperature in there would be worse than Durgan Arena with a metal roof.
How much is the deposit? I mean, can you share how much the deposit would be? No, it's not refundable, correct?
Yeah,
Wasn't
it's
it
like
3,500?
3,900.
I think it's
And so
3,500. It was half.
In the memo, at the time of the memo, the price that we had was a rough ballpark figure of
Yeah, I see
$7
that.
grand. If they came back with a different price if we went 3 days of rehearsals, which I don't think we need to do 3 days rehearsals. If we just did the Friday, I think it'd be like $8,300. That includes all sound, all the setup, their staff, and the hall underneath, where we could use that as a staging area for all of our graduates and faculty, and then any use of any projectors if we wanted to utilize them to project, you know, the Hopkinton age and a hawk on one side, or if we did a slideshow or something while parents were waiting. I mean,
Do we need a motion, or do we need, what do we need?
This is, well, it's not a motion.
It's giving you direction, and our recommendation, you ultimately decide.
Yeah, well, it's not this is a part, that's why we're here. We wanted to share the why. I think Chris has done a great job of understanding that once we received that cost, it was like, all right, this isn't sustainable. What we've learned is the cost is gonna keep going up.
But can we, like,
wedding planners do this all the time, right? Like, they have tent companies that aren't Taylor Rental that they work with, that they.
I don't think the tent thing's the problem. We can find a tent.
I
Like,
am an event planner. Right, and from an event planner standpoint, it is doable. There are, for example, I spent, time up at Gold Hill today. It is doable, but there's many other facets you have to consider in terms of, yes, drainage, parking, bathroom facilities. It is a lawn, it is a rolling field. People walking on that field. So there are definite ways to do it, for sure. It's just a matter of how much and extent you want to.
The drainage was the interesting one for me today. If we had it in one spot, he said we would have been fine. But then you eliminate the parking if you have it there, and then if you put it in the other spot, he's like, if it rains 2 days before, you can't have it. He's like,
And what about at Maple Street or Harold Martin?
Harold Martin hit him away. Again, traffic and parking. Yeah.
Well, no, you could park at the church, is it at?
I don't think you can. I don't think you could, obviously, yes, but now all right, so I'll go back to yes, anything's possible. We would have to do some traffic duty in regards to crossing the streets and all of that. I don't know if that's a better spot to have it on that field at Harold Martin.
I don't think it would be so much the field, it would probably have to be the parking lot.
The other thing that's coming to mind too is then you have the students who are driving themselves. So that's another 60 or so cars because they're gonna have to get there early for staging. So where here we have that room.
What I don't wanna see is exceed the cost of what it costs the barn trying to think outside the box necessarily. I mean, I'm open to figuring something out for this year rather than us signing a 3-year contract that's not sustainable. That's ridiculous what they're charging us. We're right there. And I'm very sensitive to what you're saying, how you can have that Hopkinton feeling and all that, but in order to do the right thing to get the ball rolling, I'm leaning towards capital as a recommendation, especially with the cost presented. That's just I'm sensitive to what you're saying. I understand the feeling of graduating in Hopkinton, but I don't want us to put a deposit down on capital and then us lose it. Between now and a couple months, we figure another way of being able to have it at Hopkinton. And then if we do our work and we find that there's no plan in Hopkinton for us to have graduation, then we lose our spot in Concord. So that's the timetable that I'm concerned about.
I have some questions. So Jody, you mentioned that there are a lot of committees that are involved in setting up graduation. And so we would need those committees if we were, if we did a no tent field day, we would still need them. And obviously at the barn, we need them. Would we need those at CCA? The Capital Center for the Arts?
I mean, it would be less so because the barn, we have to do so much trying to pretty it up. And then you have to have, the people that, the staff and the kids that all coordinate the setup of all the chairs and removing of the chairs and breaking all that down, we get all the decorations up, but then someone's gonna break it down. I mean, like last year we went, everyone was gung-ho and sets it up, but no one showed up to help break it down except for my.
So who breaks it down? So it's graduates' parents.
It's the graduates' parents that do that, but at Capitol, I mean, it's like you said, we've got projection we can use, that these days. We can still have the plants that are ordered, the nice plant pots that they do, which would give texture, but we don't have to per se decorate something to make it,
presentable.
But it'll still have that graduation feel. If people walked in, people will be like, "This is Hopkinton."
Yeah, I mean, you can project the big H. You can even have
just to have that
presentation
feeling.
of the kids. Anything. And I totally hear you, Dulcie, on the emotional part. I mean, my kids are graduating from here. I completely relate to that. And I just, it's very hard though. We've racked our brain for over a month now trying to find alternatives that make sense, and we just keep hitting roadblocks.
You look at Elmbrook,
Looked at one.
Elmbrook Park, I know they just had a huge thing there for the police.
Even for that, they had to have their parking off-site, because you can only have as many.
Yeah, the
Cars as
Elmbrook
there are
is
parking
parking
spaces.
issue, which is what the Chief Hennessy just dealt with, which, I mean, you could, I guess, consider that in terms of busing everybody in, which is what Chief Hennessy did for the fireworks.
Challenge is you have a lot of, typically you have grandparents that are coming, so you want to make it easily accessible. So busing them in and out isn't great. We want to make sure that they're able to get to their seats and they're comfortable, and so.
I guess the thing that I've noticed at the barn, after having attended graduation for the past 3 years there, I would say both the temperature aspect, because gosh, there are times where I'm melting, and the accessibility. I mean, those, aside from the increasing costs and increasing reliance on kind of in-house staff to do a lot of the things that we were able to hire out, which is an increased cost because now we're paying, Jody to event plan instead of doing her job, what she's hired to do for the district. Watching family members and graduates who may have different, need different like wheelchairs or any kind of mobility issues getting in there. I think that's the thing that when I look at the Capital Center for the Arts versus a field, where we currently don't have an ADA ramp, that's great to get down to the fields, and looking at other, if we're talking about busing people in, I guess my thought keeps going back to how are we making this easily accessible for everyone who wants to attend. And I also wonder if we do choose to change this, if we can reframe this from a loss into a new tradition, while still recognizing that it's a change. I do like Norm's idea of at least putting down a deposit while we continue to explore in-town options. Because frankly, if it was $18,000 last year, we're not going to exceed that, I hope, this year, even if we do put down a
Total.
deposit.
I don't think that was just for the facilities. I think
Right.
that
That was
included
everything.
All together.
For a lot of last minute, increased price because it was reduced out.
Has Capital hosted a graduation before?
Have they hosted, I don't know, do you know, Chris, if they've
Not
hosted a
ours.
That's a
graduation
good question.
before?
I didn't, yeah, I mean,
Yeah, I'm sure like Concord, like, yeah. all the Concord.
I don't
But, I
think
mean,
so,
I've worked-
it's too small for Concord.
yeah.
Yeah, Concord High School
Concord
doesn't.
I know they do
They do it at
performances there, I just don't know if they've hosted like
Concord uses their football field.
football.
Having a senior football.
I think Bedford goes to the SNU Arena, Manchester uses SNU Arena,
So they use all the bleachers.
Pinkerton Academy uses SNU Arena, I believe.
Some schools use Delta, Dental
Yeah,
Stadium.
Delta Stadium.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think, what more do you need from us? So it sounds like, well, we are all in recognition that this would be a big
I
change.
can also say, I can also say it's not permanent, we can try it for a year,
Yep.
right?
Yeah.
We can
Yeah.
see what the experience is and what we're able to create. You're not gonna lose the clap, they're still gonna clap us in, they're still gonna clap us out. You're gonna have improved sound, you're gonna now have a slideshow, prior to, it can be an experience and we can reevaluate it at the end of the year, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. It sounds at this point that at least the consensus is that trying something different may be the best option this year.
And real quick, I just want to say thank you to both for like just having this discussion, just so the community sees that we're not just rubber stamping without having a discussion, because we know the financial impact is significant over the next couple of years. So I think it's a healthy discussion to look at our numbers.
Just want to also, compliment Trish on all the legwork she's been doing.
She hasn't had a normal graduation since taking over as graduation coordinator. Well, none of us have, really.
But what she was very heartfelt in what she was trying to accomplish. You know, it was not budget driven in her eyes, even though it's part of it. Hers was discussion with the kids. Here's what we're thinking. Here's the experience we can provide you with this type of venue.
Yep.
So she's done a great job. She really has, and it's come from her heart, which I think we all know that with Trish. So, all right, thank you. Thanks, Chris.
Sure, you're
Yeah,
welcome.
thank you. All right,
All right, budget discussion.
it's one light topic to another.
One light and just keeps. Everything is great. Everything is awesome.
Offer some levity.
Don't sit at the table, guys, okay? Someone at home has a headache.
No, you can't touch the table or move any of your stuff because it gets picked up. It's real loud.
All right, so last week, Matt, I don't know where the button is. I already forget.
To make the
screen, yeah.
come down.
Oh,
Oh, he ran. Chris really made an exit. He's gone. Sorry, Matt. No, we'll all learn. Oh, it's like the big obvious button right over there.
Well, once you know where it is, it's not going to say, I can go over there. Can you drop it in our folder?
yeah.
It's in the folder.
Is it in the folder?
Yeah.
I only emailed it to you. Did you put it in the folder?
No, it's not in the folder.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Crazy person. Do you want me to put it in the folder?
I think it's in there right now.
It is. All right.
Thanks, Mike.
Ta-da. Oh, you can't. You just let us know when that's saved. I don't need to have this editing.
Matt, can you see it? Okay. We're on slide 1. It's not in presentation mode anymore, which is killing me on my end. All right, so started with work session last week. We presented initial drafts and discussion about the why of the initial drafts. So this is really just another update to the community on the timing and the planning of it. So we're on slide 2, which is the budget timeline. So in September, we discussed last week that we had department and building meetings, as well as the directors meeting with Michelle and I. And then we moved into October, in which we have 2 work sessions along with 2 school board meetings to discuss budgetary stuff as we move through it. As we get into November, that's when we go back to the budget committee on the town side to present the initial, what we've kind of narrowed it down to. So again, last year, I think the target ended up being $1.65 on the initial, and then we came back at $1.30 something cents. I think we ended up on. So that'll be November. Then we get back into December and we try and finalize so that we can also work on the warrant articles in regards to all the committee work. And then in January, we go back to present to the budget committee for voting. So that's the timeline. This is the same perspective that I presented last year. It's providing clear communication to the community to build trust that we're working on a budget that's fair and responsible, and making sure that we're being transparent and also solid decision making. Which leads into some of our philosophies this year. So we've said repeatedly, what's the impact on all the stakeholders? Obviously, the community and the taxpayer is one of the largest when you're working through the budget, but we also have to keep in mind the students and the staff, and we've talked about that through the process. So what is the impact of discussing whether a position is going to get cut or not? What's the impact does that have on the school community, the staff? One of the goals within the strategic plan is to recruit, retain. What's that impact? There's an impact when you're discussing positions, whether they're going to be supported or not. The improved operations, this is no secret to you guys, you hear me say it all the time now, structure, organization, and accountability. So through the budgeting process, making sure it's connected to the strategic plan, making sure that there's organization and communicating why, making sure our documents become visible, making sure everyone can have access as we move through the process so that they can review them. And then I have to reiterate now, this is my second year in the budget, so you still won't see results of mine and Michelle's last year until we work through it, but we got to continue to work away from that surplus budgeting, right? Getting to a zero-based, cost-effective budgeting process, and we're going to continue to say those things as we work through it, making sure that the surplus isn't 1.5, 1.6, whatever the numbers have been previously. We want to get down, narrow it down, and start budgeting appropriately for costs. Moving on to budgeting goals for 23-24. Strive for level funding on non-fixed, which we'll talk about in a minute. Continue to move away from a large fund balance. Remember, our goal eventually is to get to a fund balance of anywhere between $200,000 and $400,000 a year. That would be a goal. And those would be unanticipated savings as we've seen before, whether it be special ed, transportation, lower utilities, however it might be. Establish some long-term planning, and I think you heard that that was the reason why all the committee goals were on there for long-term planning. So we don't want to get to this point every year and have an up or a down, right? We want to eventually get to a point where every year we're talking about 0, 1, 2, 3, and that's it, right? It's not for this or for that. It's a continuing understanding of what the needs are within the district. Maintain a tax rate stability. Remember, in the Hopkinton community, it's a big part. Not having large fluxes, understanding the tax impact is on the community. We're not a large industry area. We're not gaining a lot from that area. And then go back to that bottom line, zero-based budgeting. You know, I keep it simple when I talk to. If I ask for 20, I plan on spending $20. Right? I'm not going to ask for 40 and only plan on spending 20, making sure that we're budgeting for all of those costs so that we're on target. And so this year, the key drivers, as we move into the next work session next week, you have the HEA contract, which was approved at town meeting. The town, I would say unanimously. I'm not sure there was much. So that was the intended salary and benefits, but also knowing that the benefits with an agreement with the HEA are cost savings as we move towards. This year it's already 2%, next year will be 2 more, which is 4, and then the following year will be 7. The HES contract, again, approved, special education required by town law, and then what you saw last week was really utilities, transportation, and inflation. So I think at the end, as we work through this process, it seems like maybe the discussion points is going to be around 200, 300,000 roughly. I think Rob's going to help me on that number in a minute, but that's really what we're debating, right? Non-fixed costs. So it's going to be that area of that number, especially when we get next week into staffing. We're really trying to figure out that number. We want to make sure we come in at a reasonable rate and also understand that we have some goals that we're going to try to achieve. So I don't think there's another slide. I think it goes to the end, yeah. So that's really the basic overview. I'm going to pull this down so I can have access to my screen again. So again, it's the general budget overview of getting into the initial presentation, and this is exactly what I was hoping for. Rob's going to say that can I talk for you, Rob, for a second? Rob's going to say that he already did some work. He's going to ask us to review some of the areas, same as he did last year. We'll come prepared next Tuesday at the next work session. We'll introduce employment, staffing. work with Rob on what we found or may not have found, and really, in 2 weeks when we get here, have that number or that target. I think October of last year, you gave us a target of $1.65 or whatever it may have been at that time, so. Any questions?
Are you, so my question is that, you know, you later in the budget process, we talk about the warrants, correct? Wouldn't it be better to talk about the warrants first, because that's a direct tax rate impact, and then when we get a feel for what that impact is gonna be, doesn't that help us better make a sound budget, knowing what's gonna be on those warrants?
We can't have the warrants drive what we need to do operationally. We can't. We have to operationally target what's gonna be.
I agree with you, but we're talking about 200, 300,000 we're gonna be talking about, right? In the budget that you mentioned?
Sure. I don't think you can have the warrants dictate how we need to operate the
I'm
schools.
not trying to dictate, I'm just trying to see a whole picture of everything, you know, because when we make the operating account number, whatever it is, 22 million, it's locked in at that specific tax rate, and then we're working from there. It accumulates real quickly is what I'm trying to say.
But if you're gonna develop, so let me just try and rephrase this. If you're gonna have the warrants, whatever's developed by the board, right, and that number becomes higher, which is gonna force us to be lower, I don't think we're doing us a service.
No, I want to make
having it.
I want to make a budget that's appropriate for the district. What I'm just trying to do is, like last year, we worked through the HEA contract and HES, and we knew what that tax rate impact was, and we didn't come to a number until we kind of had all those specific idea of an impact. I'm just kind of going through last year's exercise, Mike, that's all.
So, yes.
Because we should already know right now, ideally, like what CIP would be, right? Or not even
We have a
close?
new facilities director.
We didn't develop any of those, so the only
Okay.
ones that we had anticipated
Yeah,
was nothing more than an estimate from Michelle's office on the contracts.
okay,
And I think
That was it.
okay.
finance started working in we started to be able to get to that in November, December, maybe.
Got it, okay.
We keep track of,
I
say
would-
we, but yeah.
I mean, I would agree with Mike 100%. We've got to develop the operational budget first.
Okay.
And then I think this is going to be the change in philosophy. 2 years from now,
Yep.
we can have your conversation. Because
Yep.
hopefully 2 years from now, we've got our operational budget in place.
Yep.
And we've
It
had
goes
the
back to your-
town perhaps coming to the point where they're saying, okay,
Yeah.
we feel comfortable supporting all of your trusts at a certain level every year, no tax rate impact.
Yep.
Because it's already established.
Yep.
That's a transition, not only for the school district, but for the town in terms of the way everything has happened versus, sort of a hodgepodge approach. That some years we're gonna fund CIP,
Yeah.
some,
I
that's
see what you're
not-
saying.
It goes back to your question I told you to pause on,
Yeah,
because what you were alluding to is exactly what the goal of what we're trying to get to.
okay.
Our operational budget, right, when we talk about level staffing, finally, we talk about, I don't want to bring this up because it always turns into a discussion, but when we talk about budgeting appropriately for food service, like, so when you talk about budgeting appropriately for maintenance, again, appropriate budgeting, as Rob said, the operational budget, there shouldn't be a lot of discussion. It should be at that point, should be what is going to be
Yeah.
applicable to the community.
And that makes
And
more sense now.
And the last thing is, when we talked last year about making some of these goals, right, that Mike elucidated on slide 5, we started talking about those last year with the understanding that that would be probably a minimum 3-year transition plan. Because to get the
Yes.
district to do all of this is a massive planning,
Yep.
budgeting, communication, stakeholder
Yep.
advocacy exercise. And so we're in year 1.5 right now.
Yeah, because
And we don't even see the results of last year.
From what, 500,000, whatever, I'm just throwing numbers out, to zero in one budget cycle.
Right.
He said to us last year, it's gonna be maybe 500,000, then 300,000, it needs to depreciate over time, because he needs to understand our budgeting process as a superintendent, working with Michelle and finding new ways to eliminate a large fund balance.
Yes, and also there's other crazy, wild, unexpected swings that we're seeing the last year, like
Yeah,
inflation, that
inflation
we
is
have to be able to also understand macroeconomically how that's gonna impact our budget.
Perfect.
Yes, correct.
You guys rock. Rock, thank you.
Just before Rob jumps in, can we, this is a great presentation. I think it's really helpful to see it all laid out like this. Are we able to put this on the website under our budgeting section?
Yep.
That'd be great. Thank you.
So Mike read my mind, done a little bit of work.
Sticky notes.
I got sticky notes, I got color coding, I got all kinds of good stuff. So I guess just to start, we recall we wanted a line item budget 3 years ago, and that allows us to look at every school, every department, every grade level in terms of what they've requested and what they've spent. So part of my process as I take each one of these very large spreadsheets, thank you, Michelle, is to look at what people budgeted for and then what they actually spent. And if there's consistency, then I'm saying, okay, they budgeted appropriately. And again, I don't want to get into the weeds on what you spent the money for. That's not my job to tell anybody, you buy these pencils and not those pencils. But if you're asking for 12,000 and 2 years in a row you only spend 8,000, then I think that line needs to be looked at and perhaps has some adjustment necessary. So that's what I did. And I'll come back to that in a minute. So just the big numbers, just sort of to reinforce what Mike said, we were around 746 in terms of the increase of all of this. As I add up just the inflationary pressure, utilities, gas, transportation, that was 264,000. Special education increases, 120,000. Those are non-negotiables. Those are things we can't control. So now we're at an increase of about 362. As I went through all of this, and I'm going to turn all of these over to Mike and Michelle and let them kind of peruse through, I found about $63,000 of things that I would say, perhaps this is places where we could trim the sails and or perhaps not put it in the budget, but I don't think requisition is the right word, but to use money out of one of the trusts to fund. So for instance, in the technology budget, we've got a $27,000 item for a new phone system, a one-time expense.
Right.
In my mind, that might make an appropriate use of that tech trust fund to do that, and not be a bump on the tax rate. So when you do those things, and there are other places in there where we might want to tap into the trust. For special ed, for instance, increased pupil service costs, that might be a place where we go. And that was a fairly large number. In the maintenance, or Jim's budget, what's the category called here? Facilities. There are some places there where we might also want to do that, but that's a CIP decision. So we're really down to about 298,000. And then there was one program that I'm just going to ask Mike that at some point in the future we have a review of, which is the SAP program at the high school. What it is, how it services students. The budgeted number is $51,000, fairly large. Is there another way to meet the needs of those students and the concerns that we have? And then if there is another way, then that brings us down to about 250,000, which on a $20 million budget is a pretty small percentage increase. I think the important thing for us to share with the community, you drive through town and you see the signs that say, support everyone, no budget increases. That is simply just not realistic, right? I mean, it's just not realistic. And for me as a board member, it's also not realistic to say, we have inflationary pressure, so we're going to decrease the things that we provide to our students. That's not why I taught school. That's not why I joined the school board. That's also not realistic. So I think if we're just clear about what our costs are, why they're there, and how we're trying to manage all of that, then people will understand that and continue to support the schools in a positive way. So, I don't know if you guys have questions for me or thoughts.
The only one other thought I have, kind of on your last comment, is I think the other thing that's not realistic for us is including everything. And that, we're going to always include every single thing that's always asked for at the amount, I think that's also, I would say on the other end, not realistic.
And that's why we do this.
Yes, and I think, and these documents, I think, are in the public folder for last week. And I think it's exceptional that we get to see what is the all-in ask, right? And I think it's good for creating visibility to what our teachers and our administrators in the district are asking for, and then we figure out how we do that. And again, if there's ways that we can look at a multi-year plan, and figure out what needs to happen, then that's great. But like, these are, I think, really informative to the way that our teaching and our administrative team is thinking about stuff, and it's super helpful, even if we can't have everything. Which sucks.
That's life.
It's also realistic.
Yeah. This is really good.
So I'll take those, obviously.
Say goodbye to your printout.
Careful,
I
I want these back though. Yeah. Still have last year.
I won't touch anything.
Creating profit.
And I think I did this last year. So we'll evaluate that, and after we left that meeting, we had already started to plan things, right? So Michelle said specifically in Matt's line, there was a number that was gonna be subtracted because the printing moved to the SAU. So
Right.
some of that's already gonna adjust. The furniture, we already Michelle and I were trying to think out how we can move that maybe ahead, because that's a significant cost. The SAP program, I had already talked to Becca, an evaluation piece, so she's gonna bring that information next week to the work session for discussion. So we're ahead of you. It's the same as what we did last year, right? So I can't wait. I'm looking forward to it. And I think we're gonna find a number again that hopefully we get to the school district meeting and it goes in our favor.
Nope, just no one, yeah.
I'm confident.
Good, really confident. Are there any other things that we would like Mike and Michelle to think about or bring to us next week at the next work session, besides the giant stack that Rob just handed over?
Just email us, it's fine.
Yep, yeah, and I guess I would also say, if the community has anything that they've noticed, we're open to that as well, for sure. You can email at that on over, and we'll discuss all of that. Great. Anything else there on the budget? I think the next work session will be really helpful in finalizing the full picture, since we will be able to bring in the HUS and HEA contracts and how staffing impacts our budget, as well as I'm assuming that there will be a conversation on revenue in there at some point.
So yes, and there's a little bit more of a challenge this year because we had to be single audited, so some of our stuff isn't final, which will kind of lead into the next discussion.
Great.
But any stuff we'll be projecting will come in the next couple of weeks.
Great.
Yeah.
Will all the administrators be there next week too?
Yep.
It's wonderful.
Yeah.
I think it's just really nice if there's community members who listen or go back and watch it. It's such a great way to be able to see our team in action.
Yep.
It's great.
Excellent. All right,
Awesome.
anything else on that?
I love budget season.
No? Boy, that one was actually lighter.
Okay.
Town CIP, or Town Budget Committee discussion.
Sure, I'll tee that up. So I had a terrific meeting, in which I attended at the budget committee last month, and they submitted a bunch of questions that they would like this board to answer and report to them tomorrow night, which Rob and Mike will be joining me. I'll take over.
Yeah, so Norm goes and gives updates, and then they sometimes ask for clarifications. And so in the board notes, you'll see the 5 clarification points that they'll be looking for tomorrow night from either myself, Norm, or Rob. And I just wanted to kind of have a discussion here because you guys are my boss, right? You're the boss of me, and so in regards to some of these questions, as we're gonna say them, I just want some, I'll say, guidance on appropriateness of how to answer if need be. So the first one's, Norm had discussed that essentially our end of year surplus, and one of the pieces that we had mentioned at our last board meeting was transportation not charging us the differential on the fuel, not running a bus. So what we had budgeted for, there was a return at the end of the year. I don't know if it was 179. Michelle's not positive on the final number, but there was a number between 150 and 2 something-ish, so to speak. And so Norm, correct me if I'm wrong, but they were looking for
just a memo from Michelle saying this is how it happened, this is where it came from, that's it.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
So I guess, I understand the role of the budget committee. Why is this being asked of us? How does this impact next year's budget?
Well, this is from last year's budget. I mean, they want,
But
hold on, if there's a surplus of $179,000 in our last budget that's not allocated to, because of fuel, I mean, they want to understand why. I understand, in clarity, understand why there's a substantial amount of surplus. I think they should know that, because our goal has always been to eliminate that surplus at the end of the year. And that's been his direction to this board, saying it's going to be a 3-year process. We had a $179,000 additional amount that was added to our budget that became part of the unreserved fund balance. They just want to know how it came into fruition. They honestly didn't understand why they didn't ask, they didn't charge for the money. They were kind of.
We had talked about it, and that's, I think that's the challenge I have. We discussed that publicly at the meeting about the relationship we have with First Student, and we just re-entered and re-upped with the agreement on a multi-year plan. So Michelle can certainly create a memo that essentially says they did not charge us the fuel surcharge and we didn't run a bus for over half a year, or something along those lines.
If we have had this discussion, however, at the board level in public, why are we not directing folks to our minutes and our videos to view that board level discussion?
So you'd want me to tell the budget committee, if you want to have your questions answered, go watch it on the video?
Well, you can also pull it, you could just pull the language out of the minutes, like if that's documented, that's all.
I think I don't think I would put it as go watch the video. I just wonder, when I'm looking at some of these questions, some of these are veering out of budget committee and more into school board. And I think that you can certainly answer the question, and I think you guys did a good job answering. This is how it came about. I am wondering why we're being asked to do additional work of creating a memo specifically for the committee, and how that impacts and affects their understanding or work on next year's budget, if that's the role of the committee.
I think it's important for them to understand any changes in our budget from last year in order to get them to respectfully understand what we're doing moving forward. I mean, if they have a question regarding something in our budgeting process or something that's changed, and it's something that they approved on unanimously last year, I want to support them in something like this. I want to make it clear that all the questions on here were not, I wasn't supporting bringing it here. I'm bringing you.
Oh, no, this was and Norm came to me and I said, we should discuss this as a board.
Because I sat there and I listened to all their questions, and Andrea, I did mention back, and you guys did see the video, that they're getting a little bit too in the weeds on some of the things, because I brought them our goals, and the reason I brought that to the budget committee was because it has a financial impact potentially on our budget moving forward, right? We discussed a warrant for safety and security at some point. That is something they're going to see down the road as part of our budgeting process. And so it kind of ripples down a little bit in the sense that they do get into the weeds. And I think there needs to be some clarity from the superintendent on.
So this is my exact concern, because, and again, I'll be there tomorrow night to answer any question they have.
Yeah.
But is it now going to become a trend that they're going to look for so the special ed, we got $100,000 back from special ed. Are we going to now, out of our office, have to write them a memo of understanding on why we got to, so I guess I'm looking for guidance. That's why I wanted to bring it to, hang on, student. That's why I wanted to bring it to the board level, because you're my boss. So you help me work on this relationship, at the same time having an understanding that I look for you guys for direction. Miss McComb.
Okay, so I thought so the budget committee is a bunch of planners, right? They're people who like to have a plan and see visibility into the plan and understand the plan and do the plan. Something that has been really helpful for this board, and it's happened before, but it's also really good for this year, is you basically showed us the plan for the meeting agendas roughly for the next 6 to 9 months. And I wonder if having sort of those topics laid out between you guys or with Rob being like, at this point, we will talk about revenue or surplus, or this is when we will report on X, Y, Z. These are things we will not report on because we don't think they're the purview of this committee, but then they can have an eye towards, this is like, if there's surplus that's coming down the pipeline, we expect that we will have those numbers in and we can show what that looks like so we can start to point to what that could inform for next year.
Yeah, and this is, I'll say again, it's a partnership, but so some of these questions, it's something that you guys would be asking me, right? To make
Yeah.
sure that I'm managing the district appropriately and doing my role as the superintendent. So the next question on a report on the return of investment from the new positions we created thus far.
Totally, but and I would say that if you let them know what it was, and that would let you know like what the topics of conversation was and would be, and what the topics will therefore also not be. It provides like a guardrail.
Like, so that they can pay attention to the meetings or jump to the meeting minutes.
Yeah.
Have they ever come to, has the budget committee ever come to a work session before? I mean, I know work sessions were new last year, but have they ever come to our meetings when we're discussing the budget or when we're getting close? Has that been past practice? Or has it always just been us going to them?
I think it's always been us going to them, but like we have such a good cadence now that we should be able to say that like at tomorrow's meeting, we'll talk about this, this, and this. At the one a month from now, we'll talk about this, this, and this. Like we have a good cadence between this board and your planning cycle now that we should be able to tell them what's on the docket when. And then I think there can also be a discussion of like, it is in my purview, slightly crazy to think about an ROI on 2 positions when we are
2 months
62
in.
days into the job, maybe 92, you know?
Yeah.
I don't,
You
I
can say
didn't,
that in a tactful way, but.
Yeah.
I think the other thing, and the phrase, return on investment, always sort of gets me when I'm thinking about the types of things we're talking about, and particularly in education. So it might assume that, well, if we use this math initiative, what's going to be, show me the increase in grades. So identifying or isolating those variables is near to impossible. And I think that identifying the variables that you gain when you have an experienced director of facilities is near to impossible. How are we going to show, well, we saved money because we anticipated this maintenance and we didn't have to do this repair? I mean, and the same could be true for, you know, a curriculum director. By having better alignment K through 12 or K through 6 and then a transition to the middle high school, you know, this is not a Wall Street investment where you put $22 in and you get $67 out. So I would really sort of say, we're not going to talk about return on investment. These are the intangible things that improve our district by having these positions. If you want us to quantify them point in line, if you were to do that, I would say you're a really poor social scientist saying those are the factors, because there are just so many factors involved.
I think from what I gathered is it was a different budgeting process last year. Open and transparent, we have always been threatened with positions my first 3 years on this board. It was on the chopping block at every budget committee saying, if you don't approve this budget, this position's gonna go. And I think the wrap around their head now that we gave the superintendent a percentage on a budget, he decides who he hires. We gave our input on what we felt we'd like to see, and we did not all agree on the positions. We were split. And if we all put them in the budget, it would have been a ridiculous tax rate impact. So Mike took it upon himself, saying, you know what, I found places where I can find savings, and he was able to have these 2 positions and spend it appropriately based on the guidance of Michelle and him. They're not used to that specific way of doing things, and it's a new. So I don't know if that makes a little more sense to the board. So I think the return on investment is like, how do we get those positions? Maybe, you know, and they want to understand the math maybe to get that, because when we presented the budget as a preliminary to them last year, we had said, these are the positions we're looking for down the road for maybe the next 5 or 6 or 7 years. We know how we got there. I do. A lot of retirements, a lot of other things that happen along the way in order to get there. I think that's what they're trying to navigate through. How do we get from point A to point B. That's how I anticipate return on the investment and the financial impact.
Right? And I think this is where I get confused about the role of our two boards, or
Yeah.
our board and their committee. Is the budget committee, in their due diligence, says this is acceptable growth for the town of Hopkinton, that is sustainable, but it's not how you then go about using those dollars.
Agreed.
That's our job.
Yep.
That's Mike's job.
Yep.
So I think there's just walking that line of those variables. You know, if you have a superintendent who figured out how to do more with the same, then, you know,
Well,
I mean, we're
yeah.
speaking the same language.
Yeah, we are,
right?
we are.
Yes, I
we
think
are.
that that's true, and I think the other part of it, because this has been a big thing, I think that when we came onto the board across our 2 years was building trust between the budget committee and the school board, and we want to continue to do that. The other part of that, other than saying, looking at the broad overall tax picture from the town, is also letting them know in a clear and just like a super clear way, what is our strategy and what does that multi-year strategy look like, so that they can start to unpack that. Because some of these questions are actually questions about that multi-year strategy that you just talked about, Mike. And I think as long as that's elucidated in a way that's like, they know what the plan is, they can wrap their heads around it, and then they can look and see for how that's translating to everything you just talked about, Rob, in the last section of the meeting, and that's great. And that lets them see, like, our forward thinking, shows them how we're gonna be thinking about this budget cycle, and then we'll reinforce that the usage of those dollars comes down to the purview of this board.
The thing is that we went through transition, now they're going through transition with how we approach the budget. And so we just have to get on the same page with them. And it's, you know, Mike and I, and Rob will be there tomorrow night, and we can get them in the sense of how things are now. You know, we all work together, and I want to maintain that solid relationship with them, because they're a great group of people.
I guess for me, while I've always appreciated, Norm, that you have always been willing to support the budget committee and anything that they need, I also feel that our board and committee work as a partnership, and so that really needs to go both ways. And partnerships also include clear boundaries as far as what is their role and what is our role, and then being able to have the discussion of when things are crossing that line. And so I love the idea that Dulcie put forward of just providing them with, here's what's coming up. You know, this is where you can find that information. I think the presentation that you gave tonight could be really helpful.
I plan on doing that tomorrow night.
I think that would really answer a lot of these questions.
Agreed.
You know, because outside of whether or not, you know, the budget that we are crafting and putting forward is fiscally responsible, the running of the district, both, you know, from a legal standpoint, it really falls to this board. And I get worried when I start seeing boundaries being blurred between the two. So I appreciate the desire for a deeper understanding, and I think that there are ways that we can provide those. But if it's not hard numbers, I don't know if, you know, I don't know if we need to be bringing, yeah.
You know, representing the board, I share what I feel is the financial impact to them. That's important. I strongly believe that it is important that we can say, hey, at this meeting, this is what we're discussing. We can send something out to them. I mean, I have invited them to our budget meetings. Make it very clear. I said, hey, these are the timelines, we're doing it. YouTube, whatever you guys want to watch it. Because that's the most important time, not at the end when we've discussed it a million times and public comments right there. So, I'm not being defensive to you guys. I'm just having flashbacks from the hot seat when I was there.
Yeah.
But, no, I think clear boundaries and discussions, I think will be very important. I think the questions can be answered pretty straightforward on here. I don't know if we need to unpack them all, Mike.
Nope, this helps me enough for tomorrow night.
Okay. Let me just make sure. I do have one question. The building project came up real quick. And we've vetted out through the community with a public hearing, and we all agreed that money is gonna go towards capital improvement plan, other ways, you know, give it back to the community. There was one comment, not give it back to the community, but like taking things off the CIP that, you know,
Yes.
maybe was part of the facilities project. I did not know the answer to this, but we cannot take that and put it towards the bond payment, correct? Because someone had asked that. in the
Correct.
meeting. That's what I said, okay, perfect. That's what I wanted to know.
We cannot.
That's what I thought.
It has to be tied to something that was brought up at some point in the building plan, and we're working on
Yeah, we have,
the list for that, but yeah.
I do want that to be discussed tomorrow night. It's important for them to understand that in a roundabout way, it is being delivered back and
Go back, we had a public hearing, I believe,
Yeah, we
right?
did.
Yep, we
So
did.
after that public hearing, and
Yep.
that's your documentation for.
Yep.
Does that help?
This helps a lot.
Okay.
And I appreciate the support from Rob and Mike. You know, I think it's great having a little bit of support in these two discussions. I really appreciate it.
Excellent. Well, thank you for representing us, too.
Do my best. Thank you for allowing me to.
All right, anything else there? Do we need anything from the Budget Committee? Do we have any deep and probing questions?
We won't have anything for a while.
I'm mostly joking.
yeah.
All right.
I think you've run out of energy
I'm
for
interested in
region.
knowing, I will listen.
I never run out of energy for jokes.
I'm very interested in knowing, and I should have asked this tonight, what the plan is for roads and if there's a road bond coming down the pipeline, because that will be a big ticket item. But my guess is no. They worked on it. I know.
All right,
We're great.
moving on.
Moving on.
Doing great, guys. Okay, so the superintendent evaluation process, so that's me. So we have, surprise, surprise, a policy that looks at the superintendent evaluation. It's a pretty bare bones policy, it's pretty standard. And it's policy CBI. I don't think we have it digitized, but it is in our policy folder, which is huge. So one thing that came up last year, I think when we obviously have a new superintendent, although you're not as new, so you're only a moderately new superintendent, but last year was our first evaluation of the superintendent, and I think as a board we agreed that we feel that this process could be improved upon. So I just wanted to kind of kick off that discussion. Because this is a policy, this would be first sent to the policy committee to take a look. It would probably end up becoming a policy and a, so sometimes you have so the policy is CBI, and then it might be CBI-R. And so basically it's the form that is attached to the policy so that you're able to carry out the policy. And what the form may look like, this is speculation because we have not brought this to policy committee quite yet, but it would perhaps list out exactly how we would go about evaluating the superintendent. So I really just wanted to sort of bring it up here first. The policy committee will look at it. It will then become a public discussion. Obviously, we bring it back to you guys every time for folks to, it will do the full 3 reads. This one will certainly need it because I think that there will probably be a lot of ideas on what folks would like to see. But that was just to begin the discussion. Do you guys have any questions or input on that?
The only thing that I would just say when you guys are thinking about it is I thought it was really fruitful to have like a mid-year, midterm evaluation point. Like I know that we're basically consistently always delivering feedback to Mike.
No, we are.
But I think it's nice to be able to have like, whether it's just you and Rob, Andrea, or whatever format that takes, I think it's nice that if I think it is really helpful for the board to take a look at their goals, the superintendent's goals, the strategic plan, just even if it's a unifying exercise for us all to do, because I don't think any of us did it last year in real life. to just, if there's anything that we feel like course correction needing to happen as we're moving to the other side of the budget cycle, we're halfway through the semester, I think it's a great thing to do. And I don't know if that needs to be codified, but I thought it was a really helpful part of the process last year.
Yeah, and I also wonder if that can, you know, I know last year we sort of would touch on our board goals throughout the year, but I also think that we could probably make that a more explicit, you know, fun time in January. Take a look at your goals. So, okay, great. So yeah, that's that. That is just beginning that process, making that public. So continuing to talk about policy, because that's where it's at. So tonight I wanted to bring forward a third read and hopefully the approval of the updates to policy DJE, which is for bidding requirements. You guys might remember that the policy committee did a bunch of work and Jim O'Brien had some great suggestions that were really helpful, basically breaking this down into 3 sections, you know, 75,000 or more, for any purchases of supplies, materials, equipment, contractual services of 75,000 or more, we'll get 3 competitive bids. Any purchases between 25,000 to 74,999 may be made in the open market, but we're still going to look for 3 quotes on that, so you don't have to go through the official bidding process, but we're still looking at multiple quotes. And then all purchases less than 25,000 may be made based on the reasonable decision of the superintendent with their understanding of the market and still liking for there to be competition, but understanding that for some things there is only one guy who does it, or gal, one individual. So that's the policy. I have not heard any feedback on this. I didn't know if anyone had any final thoughts on this one.
No feedback because it's perfect.
Yeah, so I'll make it.
I didn't want to say, but, all right, with that, I'm looking for a motion to approve policy DJE bidding requirements as presented.
So moved. Second.
Great, any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so that is updated. Thank you, guys.
All right, moving on to consent agenda.
Yep.
Okay. It should be relatively quick tonight. Personnel, in your folder, you see minor changes there, on down at the bottom with some of our current employees, just some shifting of, what would you say that, 0.66 to 0.83, and then 0.52 to 0.48. So
Minimal shifts.
minimal stuff. So you'll see that in there. Moving on to superintendent's report. If you haven't noticed Maple Street, there is a new sign out front. So a shout out to the PTA. Also, who moved the other sign?
Hopkinton.
Thank you. Relocated it
looks
to
great.
where the new spot, I think it looks phenomenal there. And then Miss Emerson's, with her students, is gonna do some touch-ups and brighten up that stuff. So those are a couple of things that are coming your way. Another shout out to the PTA for Friday. They fed our staff excessively, which there was substantial take-home bags as well.
Great.
So there's one way to a teacher's heart, and that's making sure they don't have to think about food when they're walking out the door on a professional development day. So thank you to the PTA. Another shout out to Brian Johnson of Treetop Forestry. He donated his time and effort again to, I'll say, kill poison ivy and other services around our schools. So he's also working with Mr. Rozicki on, we talked about it with trees and stuff like that. So chaperone and volunteer sign-up has gone much smoother than we anticipated. So the form has worked out phenomenally. Jody's done a great job of working with the buildings now. It's in the buildings in regards to that. We have about 40 that have registered so far. So That deadline's coming soon, so make sure if you want to be one, that you get your form filled out. Safety action plan, this is a school board goal, but it's, obviously it says in working with the superintendent, Mr. Rozicki and I did quite a bit of work on that today. So we're ahead of that timeline of the January. He was able to get, believe it or not, it's changed from his last update, he was able to get Homeland Security in to audit all 3 buildings in November, which is going to be great for us. Now, we won't have the final reports, that takes some substantial time, but at least through the walkthroughs, they'll have identifiers for us, which will allow us to forecast and project. So kudos to Mr. Rozicki again on getting them in, understanding what the goals were of the board, but because that could take some, like I said, some schools might not get into it next year. So that's an update on that. And then last is kind of a little bit of a public service announcement. Through our leadership meeting today, AEDs continuing to come up, and in my previous district, we had worked with local medical providers on donations. So just kind of throwing it out there, if anyone is looking to donate pads and what was the other thing? Pads and batteries. It's a continual rising cost for us as well. So I just know that there's a lot of medical community members out there that if they have access to donations, we would certainly, that'd be one we'd love to solicit, because they last about 2 years. And now we have one for outside that we're looking for the box. Does that sound right? Did I say that right? So yeah.
Would it be okay to like send a push through something?
See, I don't want to be a donor grab type of person, but it's more of that's something we're working on. Okay. Yeah, I get it, because then the next one will be every time. But yeah. So we're just man. I think the AEDs is one that this community, probably there's a few people that might know a couple people. So that's why I brought it to this. I said to leadership, I'll bring that up at a board meeting. So. With that, there is no Ms. Gagnon tonight. She's going to report out at the next board meeting on some substantial stuff. So I'm going to leave it for that meeting, and then Ms. Clark.
Sure, we have lots of donations. One donation is not on this document because it's under the 500, but the PTA did do also $450 for their summer literacy challenge. But there was 2 donations for $590 for the Cardigan Mountain trip. One was from Maple Row Management, and the other was from Mark Goblat. There was another one for $595 from Kimberly Houston for the Cardigan Mountain trip. And then the PTA donated $1,500 for the 5th grade Boston trip, $1,500 for the Artist in Residence program, and $1,200 for the Ladybug Book Award and Stone Face book programs for the library. So thank you to everybody.
Thank you for all the donations. And the Cardigan trip was a blast, I heard.
Yeah, they're so cute.
Perfect.
So with that, I would ask that approval on the consent agenda as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Oh, any discussion? All right, hearing done. Gosh, it's getting dark
That
in
wasn't lights
here.
out. That was
All in
going on.
favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Wonderful. Thank you, Mike. All right, with that, and thank you, Lauren, for helping turn on some lights so we're not sitting in the dark. We are on to our second public comment period, so if you have any public comments for the board, you want to pop on up and just give your name and address and your comments. There we go. Now more lights are turning on. We can see again.
Good evening, Lauren Clement, 86 Maple Street. First one is on the budget. It sounded like we had 179,000 fuel surplus for busing from last year. I see that one of the larger drivers on this current budget was transportation, 74,000. That leaves over 100,000 lingering there. It looks like the ESSER 3 funds still have 158,000 in the coffers, good through 2024. It's a big chunk of change. I would think some of that could be used on maybe telephones, stuff like that as well. Hopefully, we're looking at that. You also discussed a surplus on the bond, rolling over. Obviously, that needs to be used for projects already in place. You total up those numbers and they exceed 200, 300,000. So I would think, if my math's right from what's being presented here, we should be not looking at too much of an increase if we use this funding. Second, sounds like the questions that Norm was presenting were from the budget committee. We didn't get clarification on where these questions were coming, but I thought it was a budget committee. And it sounds like they were seeking clarification on how the district funded curriculum and the facilities director. I would think if we, and I've brought this up before, had salaries listed for staff, and these positions, the answer was funded through early retirement. If the staff salaries, like the town salaries, were listed in the district books, we could easily find this math out. But again, you have to go to a right to know to go find out this information. We can't discuss it in public. Under RSA, we've got that. But the answer's right there. Put the salaries right back in the school report. Why other towns have them? You want transparency? The budget committee's looking for it. There's a problem there. Norm, you also discussed that they're welcome to come to the budget committee meetings and hear them on YouTube. They're not, the subcommittee meetings are not listed on YouTube. I continue to say this. There's a lot of valuable information that goes down on each and every one of these subcommittees, and they're not recorded. Sounds like budget committee would like to listen in. Maybe they can't attend at 2:30 or 9:30 in the afternoon as well with their schedules. So again, another reason to advocate for recording subcommittee meetings. Transparency, transparency, transparency. Thank you.
Great, thanks. Any other comments? Oh, sorry. No more. All right, great. With that, I'm going to go ahead and close public comment. Thank you, guys. Moving on, other business, old business, or committee updates. When we have meetings weekly, we don't have as many updates because we're talking about it weekly. So I don't know if there were any even committees. No committees really met last week with updates. All right. We do have a need for a non-public this evening. So I am going to need a motion for us to go into non-public under RSA 91A:3, 2I for safety and security.
So moved. Second.
Okay, any discussion? Hearing none, and this is a roll call vote.
Norm Gupel, yes.
Also from the yes.
Rob Nato, yes.
Andrea Folsom, yes. And that's it. Thank you guys so much for coming.
Mike needs to roll.